right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the DotPro show with BreakyCPK. I am BreakyCPK, and once again, excited to be here for yet another week of some Dota 2 competitive coverage. Obviously, continuing coverage really of what's TI7 coming up here. And we're going to be definitely doing plenty more previewing of that here in today's episode, including having some fun later on, and maybe even a little bit more of a fantasy focus, a fantasy approach that myself and I'm going to be joined by Zrock later once again, and we're going to definitely be talking about that. We're going to be talking about our all-star selection, so we'll see if you guys agree with us or not. Of course, it's part of this compendium that they put together for TI7, one of the many things that you can do with it, and we'll be previewing more teams, including teams specifically for the Chinese region. We're going to focus on here this week. Actually, we plan to be joined by KBBQ, also known as Jack, the translator, but he's also happens to be a great analyst and really a great guy. I got the chance to hang out with him when I went to the BTS hub here a couple of weeks ago when I was covering the regional qualifiers. He, of course, works he's very active with the BTS studio. I don't know if he officially works for them or not. I'm honestly not 100% sure on that. Maybe we'll ask him later on. But anyways, we're going to be talking with him. He is very knowledgeable when it comes to the Chinese Dota scene. And we definitely plan to get his insight, specifically on the what is 5 teams that are going to be going to TI7 and what he thinks their chances are and whatnot. So we'll be going over all that. Also, I am going to be joined by Gareth. Gareth, another caster on the scene of Join Dota, actually. He's been around the scene for a couple of years here, plus even longer than that, and another great guy to talk to. He actually is coming off his trip to the final match tournament. The final match tournament that took place this last weekend. It took place alongside the MDL, so to say the least, it wasn't maybe as big of an event. We did preview it very slightly in last week's show, but we'll talk to him about how that went, how the results played out, and what kind of happened from that. In fact, we'll also touch on that very shortly here in our initial segment that we kick off the show with, as always. So all of that and more on the show, but as always, let's kick things off with what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. So starting with the good here, going to focus on the MDL event. Mars Dota 2 League took place throughout this last weekend, and again, we were even talking about it as we were recording last week's show. They were finishing the group stages, going into the playoffs. This event, and so I'm not only putting it under the good because, it ended up being just a fun event, or as expected, a big event. Again, 6 of the 8 teams in this tournament are going to be going to TI. The only 2 teams are Clutch Gamers and Vici Gaming that aren't going, happen to be very good teams as well. So we had quite the roster here, and what ultimately included Invictus Gaming, Newbie, OG, EG, LFY, and LGD, again, with Clutch Gamers and Vici Gaming right there. So we had this 8-team tournament, $250,000 prize pool, quite the prize pool on the line, but what I was really stressing going into this tournament, and I definitely feel it's the same after, nothing really changed my mind on this, is that I was expecting this to be a great event in the sense of a viewer even, but I'm not taking a lot from it. I'm not necessarily taking the results that took place and going to overreact in terms of, this means everything now going into TI7. Teams were going to be using this event as a training ground of sorts to kind of get used to this most even recent patch that just came out even very recently here, and also to get comfortable once again playing against the international teams and seeing what everyone else has. And frankly, we saw that. We got to see a bit of that here in this event. Most noticeably, we had some funky stuff going on from especially EG and OG. A couple of these teams here. EG actually ran support Puck several games. It happened to actually work pretty well for them, and it made Puck a top priority ban against them later on. It was really fun to see because you get to a point where Puck, with Crit playing it as well as a support hero, you also have Universe can play it well in the offlane. You also have, of course, Sumail can play it very well in the middle lane. Teams were just like, you know what? We just don't want to have to deal with it. So whenever you can really be that diverse with the hero, it definitely raises the chances for it being banned against you, thus leaving open other options even. So I like to see that, and that was one of those, like, I actually think there is something to it kind of picks. Now, we also saw some funny stuff, including a Pugna pick a couple of times from EG, both in the hands of Sumail as well as, I want to say, Zai later on. So they ran it both as a support and even a mid Pugna. I don't think either game ended up doing that well in the end, so there's that. And then on top of that, we actually saw Ancient Apparition being played by Sumail. Yes, you heard me right. Ancient Apparition, this hero that is only support in everyone's mind. And I think even after this, it's still that case. I believe that wasn't a losing effort, if I'm not mistaken. I'm actually looking back right here real quickly to 100% double check on that. But I want to say that was in a loss for sure. Yeah, that wasn't a loss to Newbie. That was when they played Newbie. Granted, the hero himself did pretty well, and he ended up building, what was it, a Daedalus, a Mjolnir, a freaking Hurricane Pike. He built him as this crazy right-click hero. But ultimately, again, in a lost cause. And then he had OG running some stuff, such as, again, they were running some no-tail and they playing Arc Warden. They're in a lot of Phoenix, which no doubt is something that we actually probably should expect to see. But again, there was just some funky stuff like that going on. And to be very clear, I'm not suggesting that these teams aren't trying by going with these picks. But it continues to go back to my ultimate point that I'm not going to let this tournament influence how I look at TI7. With all of that in mind, the results were kind of interesting in that LFY and LGD actually ended up meeting up both in the winter finals as well as the grand finals of this event. OG actually ended up first place in the group stages going into the playoff stage, where then they were knocked down to the losers by LGD, and then eventually they were knocked out by Newbie in the fourth place spot. OG actually matched up against Evil Geniuses in the losers bracket round 2. It ended up being a really good series, as you would expect. A 3-game series that OG won after splitting the first 2 games and then came back to win the third game to advance on in the tournament. But the top 3 teams ended up being Chinese teams, including the sister teams of LGD and LFY. And LGD actually won the grand finals 3-2 over LFY in a very, very good 5-game series, going the distance right there after LFY had knocked him to the losers bracket in the winter final. So you look at those results and you kind of think to yourself, well, maybe this is a sign of good things to come for the Chinese region, right? As far as going forward and going into TI7 here. Again, I'm not necessarily sold on that just from these results because of what we really were expecting going into this tournament and what we kind of got from it in the end. But it's still impressive nonetheless. And I will say LFY especially has probably opened a lot of eyes, because I think LGD people probably expected to do very well. But again, LFY, this is also a team that finished ahead of LGD in the regional qualifiers. In fact, I think they defeated them on their way to doing so, if I'm not mistaken. But so LGD, they had to, win in the third spot after Invictus Gaming Vitality claimed that first spot, of course, of what was the China regional qualifiers. All in all, it was a great event. It was a lot of fun. Definitely got the spectator side of it down as far as the production of the event was great. We had some great hero picks. We had some great competition. It was overall a very good event. So that's why I definitely label it under the good here. And if you happen to miss it, hopefully that gives you a good idea of a recap. And also I would highly recommend definitely checking out some of the VODs from that match and getting an idea of what teams were running. Leads me into the bad. And actually on LF1 and LGD, we'll talk about that in a little bit later on here. I'll get to that shortly. But as far as the bad is concerned, we're actually going to go over to the other event that was happening at the same time, the final match. Now, the final match, pretty interesting. It was a $50,000 tournament held in Lima, Peru over this last weekend as well. It was actually a mix of mainly invited teams and then a couple of qualified teams from both South America in general, as well as a couple of Peru-specific qualified teams. So there haven't been a lot of these international events in South America, especially as of late. So in that sense, it's definitely cool to see. But I will say, I as somebody that really tries to keep up to date in terms of all these events that are going on in the Dota 2 scene, putting on this podcast in the first place, I mean, that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to do this, was to not only give myself the chance to get more knowledge about what's going on in the scene, but to then, give you guys that information, to definitely give you guys an idea of what's going on and have the best, way to do it possible. But this tournament completely, I overlooked it, other than if it wasn't for, I think Zrock actually brought it up last week in the podcast, and it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, that's right. This event's going on. I kind of forgot about that, to be honest. So the point is, leading me to my bad, though, what I want to focus on with this event, because again, I don't want to suggest that the event as a whole was bad. I wasn't a huge fan of the format. They did a 2 groups, 4 teams in each group. It was only 8 teams total. 4 teams in each group. It was best of 1 group stages, and then the top 2 move on to a playoff stage. I should correct that. Everyone moves on to the playoff stage. Top 2 go to the winners. Bottom 2 go to the losers. So everyone did move on. So at least they didn't get eliminated, which would have really sucked. But then the losers bracket then even had to play a best of 1 on top of that. So you had teams basically playing 4 games in total between groups and playoffs, and they were done. And that happened for a couple of teams, including the one that I want to focus on here in Infamous. Infamous actually went 1-2 in their group. They were actually matched up with Alliance, Elite Wolves, and Midas Club Elite. Obviously, a strong group, sure, but we're talking about a team that just qualified for TI7 outside of the South American region, specifically from Peru on top of that. So this was a team that, in a sense, was kind of the home team and was hoping to, if anything, use this event as momentum going into TI7. They didn't. They came up short. Not only did they go 1-2 in groups, getting knocked down to losers, but then they lost their 1-game series to a very good Team Spirit team who happened to go to the losers as well right away. And Spirit made a run all the way to the 3rd place match, actually, where they finished 3rd place, losing to SG Esports. By the way, Alliance won the tournament in the end. They actually defeated SG Esports 3-1 in the grand finals. That was the only game Alliance actually dropped this whole tournament. So on the other side of it, Alliance actually looked very good this tournament. That's definitely, good to see for them. Again, we're not talking about the toughest competition by any means, but it's still good to see them doing well here. But I do look back at Infamous, and yes, the format was pretty unfriendly. This isn't the greatest format ever, and best of 1 series in groups into a best of 1 playoff is not something that you really can take away in terms of what happened here. But unlike the MDL, where I wasn't really looking into it too much at the results, this one I definitely was, mainly for the sake of Infamous, because again, being a team that just qualified for TI7 and playing against, frankly, mediocre competition, ideally, including majority of these teams actually being from the same region, they should be able to perform, at least go deep in the event, if not even make the finals, if not win it all. Again, on top of that, being the home field team in a lot of ways. They lost, though. They pretty much lost. They only won the 1 game in groups, which was, who was that even against? That was against Midas Club Elite, who ended up going winless, actually, this tournament. And then, again, getting knocked out by Spirit. So, yes, the format wasn't friendly, but I would be curious. I definitely plan to talk with Zrock about this later on in the show as well, get his take on it, what to take from it. But yes, Infamous could just as easily shrug this off and go into TI7 thinking that this isn't a big deal and they could still do well. They could still pull some upsets. I'm not doubting that. But it does hurt the cause. It does hurt their chances, it feels like, a little bit. And I kind of wonder if their egos are almost, bruised a little bit because of this. Now, it's probably not because, again, they're still going to Seattle. They're still going to TI7 pending visa issues, I hope. And I'm sure that's not going to be an issue in the end. But it'll be interesting to see what Infamous does at TI7. And this was not the results that they were hoping for when it came to this event. So other than that, and again, we are going to talk with Gareth actually later on to get his take on the event and see how it went. But from what I could tell, it actually ended up being a pretty solid event in the end. And good for the South America scene to have events like this ultimately. But also congrats to Alliance, of course, for winning it all. That leads me into our ugly. Now, our ugly, I'm going to preface this with I really am not the most knowledgeable on this, so I want to be very careful here with how I word this and what I really say. In fact, I don't really plan to say much. This is just more of I plan to bring it to you guys' attention, and you take from it what you will. There was a post that was made on Reddit a couple of weeks ago now. In fact, I have it pulled up right here. essentially accusing the LGD organization of having access to a key of sorts. Let me try to find out exactly how they word it. So, an admin API key. Now, with this admin API key, apparently, they had the ability, or have, again, that's kind of the debate now, of being able to gain access to watch private scrims, private matches of other teams. Obviously, there are a lot of these private scrims that go on amongst these top tier teams, especially when an event like TI7 is coming up. They don't want their strategies or what they're trying to be seen by all these other teams, of course, and that's understandable. I mean, you kind of compare that idea to traditional sports. It would be like, in fact, we've definitely had cases like that, most noticeably for anyone that's maybe an NFL fan. We had the whole Spygate controversy with the New England Patriots. This was 4 or 5 years ago now, but hell, even longer than that, I think. Basically, it was kind of along these lines where they were accused of recording other teams' practices and scrimmages or whatever to use to their advantage, right? To use to their advantage, to understand what they were truly practicing, to be like, okay, well, now we're going to practice this as a result, or we're going to counter this way, whatever. They're getting access to information that they just simply shouldn't have. That's what's being accused here. Again, there hasn't been. Now, I guess there has been evidence that this organization, specifically somebody by the name of Ruru, apparently, who I guess is on the administration side of LGD, if I'm not mistaken, for whatever reason, he had this admin API key, this admin API key with the ability to do so a while ago, and we're talking months ago, I believe, from my understanding, if not even longer than that. Oh, Ruru is the owner of LGD, to clarify. Okay. So, yeah, again, I'm kind of just going over it more as I'm talking about it here as well. But just to clarify, so Ruru is the owner of it. And so this Reddit post came out about 6 months ago, which was the initial one that was making the accusations and had some chat logs, I guess, and some translations that were going on as far as what's happening here. Again, why he had access to it, I honestly am not 100% sure. But point is, apparently he did. Now, when this was brought to Valve's attention, whether it was via Reddit or was submitted to them, whatever the case, I guess the idea was that it was taken care of. It was removed, the key was removed, whatever. And very likely that could be the case. In fact, in my opinion, that's probably the case. However, there is an uproar lately. And with these results that happen in MDL, where LFY and LGD, not only do they just qualify for TI7 together, but now here they are getting 1 and 2 at the MDL event, it, of course, reinforced this accusation that they still have access to said key. This is a really unfortunate situation because, again, I don't know one way or the other, but we don't have evidence right now that suggests that they still do have the key, yet they're being accused of it mainly because Valve has not said anything publicly at this point. There has been pretty much no word from Valve that they've taken away the key or that they've taken care of the issue or anything at this time, which is leaving the window open for this speculation to continue. And with these recent results, again, the reinforcement taking place that, they obviously still have it because they're getting these great results. It sucks for the players, especially if it's not true. Now, if it is true, obviously that's a different story that we're talking about. But I'm one that likes to believe in a system where innocent until proven guilty, right? And there is no evidence that suggests that they do, other than, they maybe used to have one and we haven't been told that it's different now. So that's kind of what's going on here. I hope, whether or not Valve actually should say something publicly, it was kind of interesting. I was reading the most recent post that was made and some responses to it. There are those that are fine with Valve not even responding publicly. And I think I kind of fall under that, right? Like the idea that if Valve announces publicly that they even gave up this key access in the first place, or I guess he got a hold of it somehow that he shouldn't have, or it just fell into his hand somehow due to an error on Valve's part, whatever it is, it's just going to make them look bad in the end. Where instead, right now, it's LGD as the organization looking bad at this point. And if you're Valve, I can understand why they're not necessarily looking to kind of step in here and, be the saving grace by any means. And maybe this is something we can actually talk with Jack about, actually, now that I really think about it, if he has a little more inside information on this. But whether or not how LGD is reacting to this whole situation, how Ruru, the owner of LGD, is even reacting to this whole situation. But that's why, I thought it was a good one to put under the ugly, because it's kind of bringing up this debate right now and this back and forth, and it's, again, especially if it's not the case, they don't have it anymore, which, like I said, I like to be an innocent until proven guilty kind of guy. This really is kind of something that's overshadowing these players and their success that they've been having lately and what they've been doing. Now, I want to make it very clear that if they do have access and if they do have this magical key that is giving them information, it is a big deal. I want to be very clear about that. This is not something that I'm just overlooking as, okay, whatever. Is it really a big advantage? It absolutely is. It is a huge advantage to have over other teams to gain access to this information when we're talking about a $20+ million prize pool tournament. By the way, we broke the prize pool of last year, in case you haven't heard. This is officially the biggest prize pool event in esports history. Congratulations, guys. Isn't that fucking awesome? Back to on point, though. It would be a big deal, and absolutely something needs to be done at that point. And there definitely should be punishments going out, and very, very severe ones at that. But as we stand, that's not the case. We do not have hard evidence by any means. I give congratulations to the LGD organization currently in terms of their recent success, and I do look forward to seeing them at TI7 and how they do. This does overshadow things a little bit, but hopefully, and maybe we never will, but hopefully more information comes out that will just give everyone the best idea in terms of where things are at with the situation. That's the good, the bad, the ugly, guys. We got our guests coming up here, including Jack, a.k.a. KBBQ. Plenty to talk about with the Chinese Dota 2 region. Sit tight, guys. More coming at you. Okay, guys, welcome back. And now it is a pleasure to be joined by the one that actually this very show, you could say, it used to be his show back when he was working with the Defense of the Patients guy. So it really is awesome to have him on. I'm going to be joined by Jack here, also known as KBBQ. Jack, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. Just a throwback to the early days, like that just started using Zencaster as we talked about, and I think I did a couple episodes with Woodshrew. I think I believe he's finishing up his masters now, so he's a lot of things can change in a year or two. So glad to be back here. It's fun.
No, yeah, happy to have you on. I obviously got the chance to also meet you in person and say hi to you at the recent regional qualifiers, the BTS hub. So, are you working like with the BTS guys? Like, what is your role there?
Kind of as talent for some of their events, but for this past year, there were some things to be done in China that I tried to help out with.
Right on. Well, again, obviously, as you mentioned, the China scene is, of course, what you're really known for having the knowledge in. Obviously, you're a translator, and you've done a great job with that in the past, and I'm sure in the future to come. But, in general, I feel like your knowledge is great. You're a great analyst. But, again, China being your main focus here, I wanted to have you on to kind of break down a little bit more the China scene, we could say. Again, we have five great teams for China that are going to TI7, of course, but the China region as a whole, I feel like as the Western scene, we don't necessarily, get maybe the best insight all the time in terms of how things are really going over there. So I wanted to bring you on to kind of, give us that inside idea, as I'm sure you will. Starting from the beginning, I know before we started the recording here, you were talking about how things really this year were somewhat different than they've been in previous years for the China scene. So what do you mean by that?
Well, last year coming into TI, so obviously like Wings ended up winning, but Wings was a pretty big unknown, I think. They'd won the Summit before, but they had just been a really up and down team because they'd finished, I think, bottom 16, first round elimination at the Manila Major, at which point they nearly disbanded afterwards. And they just had like a very rocky time, and they're kind of seen as this like, hot or cold wildcard team. And then there were two other teams coming in to TI who were, because of visa issues, were playing with subs. So I believe it was VGR and LGD, if I'm not mistaken, who were playing with their coaches as subs because of visa issues. So, and then there was, I think, eHome and somebody else had made kind of recent roster changes. eHome and Newbie it was. Newbie hadn't made a roster change. They'd had that kind of look of like old veterans with newer players. But eHome had recently made their roster change with Ice. And so I think there wasn't a lot of maybe optimism last year. Like people were kind of pinning their hopes on Wings for Chinese fans. Like obviously they hope that a Chinese team wins, and they had to keep the whole even year Chinese champion, odd year type of thing. So this year the joke goes, it's an odd year, so maybe they can't break the curse, or if they will break the curse, as the old joke also goes, it'll be LGD that does that. But this year I think you have a lot more stability with the teams. For most of these rosters, like they've been together for some time. IGV has been together since last year's TI qualifiers and even before then. So they decided to stick with it. Newbie has not changed throughout the year, even though they've had some up and down results. They've been consistently the best team in China, and they've also kind of gone with this model of like, we're going to have this team and we're going to stick with it. We're going to stick it through and let them like grow and progress. And then obviously with like LGD and LFY, they did make some changes a few months ago, but for the most part, like as long as everything goes through and everyone's able to get their players to the tournament, it's a more stable collection of teams this year, I think.
So without getting into too many specifics here, it sounds like they definitely got the stability going in your mind this year. Do you feel like the China region is going to make a big splash at TI7? Could you even see one of these teams winning it all?
Yeah. If I were to rate the likelihood of that happening from last year, I'd say I think it's a lot less likely. I think you have a couple of teams from people that I've asked or talked to and watched. I think people are highest on LGD and Newbie, or maybe they have LGD somewhere with LFY. But these teams, while LGD won MDL, which we'll get to, like they're very consistent. They're solid teams, but it always feels like when they get to the later stages of a major tournament against like the truly elite teams at the time, they seem to struggle a bit. I don't know whether it's the drafting, and we'll get into that, or if there's something there, some ingredient that seems to be missing. But I'm not sure if they have what it takes to unseat the favorites of this tournament, which are going to be some of the stronger Western teams.
So I kind of bring that up because one thing that I've personally kind of been a proponent of is these majors throughout this year. Of course, the two that we had, both the Boston Major and the Kiev Major, the China teams didn't necessarily have the best results. I think at the Boston Major, it was one team got to the top 8, I want to say. And then at Kiev, we had IG, one team getting to the top 4 out of China, despite having 5 and even 6 teams at the Boston Major from the China region. What do you think the reason for that was? Did it just happen to be coincidence of those competitions, or were things kind of a little rocky there earlier on?
Yeah, the Boston was a disaster. I think the only Chinese team that advanced was LFY, and it's because they played another Chinese team in the first round, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely was. Like you had favorites at the time, like Newbie not doing so well, and then there were also, I think, 3 teams also because of visa issues had major roster swaps, if I recall correctly. I think Burning was playing for IGV. There were 2 subs on IGV, and I think it happened again with one of the other squads. At least, or 1 or 2 of the other squads too. So, not playing with your full roster, I mean, that really throws a wrench in things. So, I don't want to just put it all on that, but that's definitely going to affect like half the teams in the pool. And then the other teams, I think Newbie may have overlooked their opponents a little bit, or were thrown off a little bit by Ad Finum's playstyle, and that third game didn't go well for them. And I think, but if you're a Chinese fan though, in general, kind of the strength of Chinese teams relative to the rest of the world has been on a decline for the last few years. Like when Dota 2 first came out, or a little bit before then, I think Chinese teams were just considered like dominant, the cream of the crop. You had that the eHome squad, the ESWC era, and then you had TI2. Was it like LGD went undefeated, 15-0 in group stage or something? And I think IG only dropped one game, and then the Chinese teams were considered pretty dominant. But in recent years, that's kind of gone a little bit more downhill, and Wings was considered like a renegade, a wild card hope, so to speak, because they didn't grow up in like the same environment as these other teams, and they kind of just came out of nowhere, had like a vastly different play style, weren't like bound by some of the kind of boundaries and restrictions that some of the other teams had in terms of like, well, if you go into that, like here's the thing: if you have some of these players who've been very established, been around for a long time, they have that experience and they have that status. But that status can sometimes be a double-edged sword. If it's working out and you have someone who's, still committed, a great leader, then yes, like that's a huge boon because there's leadership is just such at a premium in Dota. You need that on the team so much. You need those old guys sometimes to bring in newer players. But sometimes, the older guys are harder to play with. Sometimes they're a little bit more resistant to newer ideas or embracing stuff. Sometimes within the organization, it's harder to get one of the older guys to, like maybe rein themselves in or maybe say, hey, we need to take a step back and remotivate. And all of those things could be an issue for the older players. That's something that the scene has maybe had trouble with on the international stage.
So China as a whole here, as far as something I've really noticed too, watching them, even most recently here in these regional qualifiers, it seems like that they have their own meta of sorts. We saw a phase where they went through it, stood out, mid Venomancer, they especially were running, where other regions weren't necessarily, and then all of a sudden other regions kind of started it, and then it just all died out together. Or I noticed that they don't actually pick up a lot of Lina mid compared to other regions, just things like that. Are you surprised by that ever, or is that just because like the nature of the scene over there in China where they're just so I guess not, I don't want to say like trapped in their own scene by any means, but they're really just focused on playing against their own teams, that they have their own strategies developed as a result compared to other regions?
Yeah, I think the word, if not trapped, is like insulated or something like that, because they play against each other so much. Like here's one of the main differences. Like for a lot of Western teams, especially like the more elite teams who kind of get their pick of litter of tournaments, say like an EG or something, they might not play in that many LAN tournaments. They might mostly be playing their own Dota and then getting together to really like boot camp and practice for stuff. For Chinese teams, it's very different. Like even down to like the tier 2, tier 3 teams, they're in a team house, they're playing together like the whole day. They'll be pubbing and doing other stuff, but usually they have multiple matches per day, sometimes for different tournaments. I recall like last year, there's a situation where I think it was IGV or IG went to a tournament, and then the same day they had to go to LAN Cafe and a different venue to play for another tournament. Like that's pretty common. Like teams will play 3 or 4 events in one day, and then at night they'll have practice and scrims. So it becomes very insulated. Like they're constantly playing this in this kind of clan war environment when they are playing Dota. And maybe pubbing less than a Western team will. This varies again from team to team and player to player. And then they're playing in like very structured games all the time against teams that they know very well. So that meta kind of develops organically on its own. Like if you see the meta as like, not an end all be all type of thing, but just teams responding to one another one step at a time. Like one team does this, next team does that, and it just keeps growing. Then yes, China will develop its own organic, fishbowl of a scene, of a meta, of a team, their own thoughts on heroes and things like that. So that's where you see that come from for the most part.
Do you think that may ultimately hurt them in the long run, or is that just something like, because to be fair, all regions do it to an extent. It's just how established China is as far as having their own scene together compared to the other regions. It's just that much more, staple, that much more engraved, and that much more powerful, really, compared to the other regions to an extent. But do you think that may hurt them when it comes to them only playing off of each other?
It could. I think if depending on your perspective, you could view them, say, struggling or not performing as well at international events as kind of symptomatic of that, because it often feels like they adapt slower to patches, or they adapt specifically to each other, and then when they come to an international tournament, it feels like they're playing catch up sometimes, or there's just wrinkles or certain things thrown at them that they're not ready for, or that they have to adapt to. So that's one way to look at it. You're just kind of like staled or fermenting in your own scene, and then what's happening outside the world. And I think there's a historical parallel to be said for this as well. I want to kind of open up the history books a little bit here, but China obviously very long history. There's a long period of time where they were very isolated, where they kind of cut themselves off from the rest of the world. And, I would say that over the last few hundred years, in some ways, they've been punished for that. And then when they encountered, like, say, these foreign powers or foreign countries, they had a lot of catching up to do, where things were different. They were behind. They'd kind of put themselves in that own little jar, and it had gone from there. So if you're going to make that kind of parallel, I think that's one way to look at it, too. It's like they're just too insular, they're just too inside their own little jar. And then if their meta is ahead of other regions, if their understanding of the meta, of the heroes, of the strategies is ahead, then they'll do very well because they have more than enough practice. The kind of team fight environment, all that stuff is great for them. But if the meta is behind, then they will spend a lot of the tournament playing catch-up, or certain wrinkles will be thrown at them that they're not ready for. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Absolutely, and kind of off of that too, we've already touched on it a little bit as well. The MDL event happened here recently. We saw, obviously, China in this case happened to be very dominant. In fact, the top 3 teams, all from China, including LGD and LFY, meeting in the finals. LGD ultimately taking it over LFY, but Newbie even that third place team in the end right there. So what did you... Are you taking anything away from those MDL results as if, okay, well, now everyone else has something to worry about? Or do you feel like maybe this was home field advantage of sorts, or with the new patch, you're not really looking too much into it?
Well, I will say this, home field advantage has unfortunately not always been so kind to the Chinese teams when they've had it, whether it's the Shanghai Major, whether it's previous MDLs. I think EG had won the last one, and eHome won the previous MDL before that, so I guess it's been pretty good for them. And then I guess IG won DAC. So I think there's not too much to be taken away from this. I think based on just talking to people and watching some of the games, like I feel like some teams were really, kind of experimenting with stuff, trying stuff out, and then some teams are still trying to find themselves. And I feel like some teams, from what I've heard, got more out of practice. With just like scrimming with the other teams and treat it as like a mini boot camp of sorts, more than like the actual tournament itself. Like they got what they wanted from practice or from playing, and then from the tournament itself, maybe not so much. But then again, the other view is that you can't really hold back too much in these type of tournaments, or there's no point in going, and you want to test what you have, like the ideas that you have against what's out there to begin with. So I wouldn't take too much away from this tournament. I mean, in the end, there were 5 Chinese teams out of the 8. So I don't think it's that shocking that they would get the top 3 spots. I think the OG Newbie series, I was really impressed with the second game that Newbie played. But I don't want to get too off topic. But I wouldn't take too much away from that. I think LGD showed that there are kind of like this hot and cold team where they can look very bad one day and they can look like, as the fans say, like a dynastic team the next. I think LFY and Newbie have a similar profile in the sense that they're like pretty solid and pretty stable teams, but their draft versatility and their like adaptability is a little bit on the low side. Mm-hmm. So that's something that could hurt them. That's something that I think, like as I said before, could affect them when they get to later stages of a major LAN. It could be something that holds them back.
So before we get too much further into the teams from China that are going to TI7, I do want to bring up the team, and again, you've mentioned the name a couple of times here, the team that's not going, the returning, or not even the returning champions, the last season champions, that is Wings Gaming. Again, I don't know how much you really want / can say about this, whatever, but what did you think about that whole situation? Because again, we there's obviously been a lot of posts about and everything about as far as the Ace organization and with the wing side of it. What is your kind of take on what happened there?
I think it was just a really complicated situation from all sides. The one side that we haven't really heard from publicly is like the Wings organization itself. If you look at the perspective of the players, I mean, they obviously are Dota champions. They put heart and soul into that, and maybe they felt that the organization wasn't really aligned with that, and so they didn't want to be a part of that anymore. They wanted to move on, and obviously, like at some point, those players couldn't really play together anymore because of various internal conflicts, and so that caused everybody to kind of, when the situation came down, it was kind of everybody's got to look for their own way out and figure out their own solution to it. So that's unfortunate, and some of the players have expressed to me that they felt that maybe they acted a little bit hastily, or if they waited and taken the process a little bit more slowly, things could have turned out better. And then from the perspective of AC, if we try to be sympathetic to them or see from their perspective. They're there to protect the interests of their member teams in the way that the league is. So they're not going to just side with the players, or especially like initially they're not going to side with the players. So obviously the devil is in the details for everything else that happened there, and everybody's got a story and there's different sides. But I think it was a tough situation for everybody, and I feel like all sides probably think they could have handled it better.
It does feel a little naked, with the TI7 coming up, not even having the returning champions, and hell, we don't even have the second place team as a result of Planet Odd not qualifying, of course. But the door's open now for obviously plenty of teams to take that title in the end coming up here. So
that's worth mentioning. I mean, Planet Odd did make a roster change afterwards, but Wings and Team Random, if they'd stayed together, would have been the same roster, and that was how far it got. Like, it got to the point where the team would ostensibly give up a direct invite to TI because they didn't want to play together anymore. And I've gotten to know this team like fairly well from last year. Been with them to a couple tournaments. I stayed with them through boot camp last year. Actually, it's about the 1 year anniversary of them kind of boot camping here in near Los Angeles in the lead up to TI. And you see some of the changes that happen. Like, you see just the level of like complete dedication that they had to the game last year. Like, even when they were doing well or winning tournaments, like that fire was constantly there. It's not to say that the fire wasn't there this year, but then you start to see different things happen. Like at TI, maybe the people who were in the suite who weren't there before, maybe afterwards, like they things start to change, or you see like they spend more time maybe doing other stuff, or playing other games, or not just practicing together all the time, or maybe like some of the motivation is not at the same level, or maybe I don't know if you've ever read. Do you pay attention to basketball, Breaky?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I'm sure you've heard of Pat Riley, right? And he had a book. Yeah. He had a book He had a book he wrote on the Showtime Lakers, and there's something in there that he talked about called the disease of more. And what that was is, shout out to Bill Simmons, because I got this from one of his columns. And ended up reading the book myself, which is that like once you win that championship, you've made so many sacrifices as an individual to get that to that point. Like, you have to give up parts of your ego. Like, very few players get to fully fulfill their exact vision, right? You have to make compromises with your other teammates. And Dota is as much a mental, mechanical type of game as it is an emotionally intelligent game as well. Like, you have to be able to work with people. So, at some point, maybe if you've won TI, you're less willing to make the same kind of concessions or sacrifices, right? Or you're kind of saying like, hey, like if I could win TI with this or that person, and doesn't that mean I could do that with other people? Or why do I need to still do this or that? And at some point, maybe it just becomes not worth it, and maybe there's a shelf life for certain teams and for certain personalities where you can only just stay locked together for so long before you really just can't do it anymore. So I think that kind of just ran its course with them, and it's unfortunate that none of the players will make it to TI7 as a player. But they, for the most part, I think they're still going to continue their careers. There was some hesitation about that, some other options considered, but I think they're still trying to play, and we'll see where that goes. Hope to see them back someday.
And then you have the Golden State Warriors that continue to take less money on all the players to keep that going, and you have what's now this dynasty in the making. So that's what's always so much more impressive when a dynasty does happen. I mean, that's obviously one of the many hurdles that you have to get over when you do create a team that is able to be successful for so long, is that idea of playing with each other and be willing to play with each other, knowing all the sacrifices that you have to make year after year to do so. So yeah, no, that's a great point on that. So on that final note you made though, so do you expect to see all these players, the former Wings players, to ultimately play again in competitive Dota 2?
Yes. I think for the most, well, there's a few examples. Like one player, really liked the U.S. When he was here and was considered maybe. The players are very young, except for Blink. Blink is 24, I think, or 25, and so there's 1 year of college that he hasn't finished, so he's considering going back to school and kind of finishing that. Some of the other players are very young, and there's been kind of other paths that they've explored. The team in Boston, they visited Harvard together after the Boston major, and there was kind of like a bit of a panel or forum session that happened there about like esports, and so they got a chance to go through the campus and see what that was like, get a taste of that. And a lot of these guys, like they dropped out of school very early, like junior high school, to pursue this. And so there's, with like, they're still very young. There's still a lot of like kind of options and corridors that they can take, and that's something that they consider exploring. But I think for most of the players, Dota is still, their main passion, and that's still there. And so I think Dota will, Dota is also, it's also a rare opportunity, right? Like how many times, even if you get to do other things, are you like potentially the best in the world at something that you do? That's got to be something that drives them as well. So.
Well, it'll be fun to see how that, how that all turns out. Hope for the best and hope to see them definitely playing more. But, all right, so now looking at the teams that are going, focusing on more the China side, I want to start first with Invictus Gaming right here, because this is a team that, again, they finished 4th at the Kiev Major. They were looking hot. I believe, didn't they win an event after that, I want to say? If I'm not mistaken, or was it before? They won some big tournaments.
They won DAC before.
That's right. They won DAC before. So anyways, the point is, obviously, they've definitely shown that they can win. And again, even doing very good at Kiev itself. The experience in Burning, obviously, in fact, one of the older players in this whole event, I believe. However, this is a team at MDL that didn't perform too well. They got knocked out fairly earlier on. And it seems like that they have been going a little bit downhill post all of that. Now, they got an invite spot, so is it fair to really judge that about them? Or do you think Invictus Gaming is on a little bit of a decline coming into TI7?
I think most people looking at this team would not project them to finish very highly just based on recent results. So DAC was they really got hot for that month or two. Like I think they won the DAC qualifier pretty convincingly. I think around Chinese New Year, a little bit afterwards, and then they just went on a hot streak, and that patch was perfect for them. Like they seemed to, whether it was the Lina, whether it was the roaming forward position that Boboka was playing, whereas he played a lot of Earth Spirit before, but then you had the Monkey King, you had the Breaky, those things just fit their strategy perfectly. They had this kind of 2-3-4 where their mid, their offlane, and the roaming support would just set the pace of the game, and they just had like a feel for that, and then it worked out perfectly for them. But then this is, for DAC, and then afterwards, like, it feels like a lot of patches may take some aim at the stronger teams or the better teams. And it feels like, with Monkey King essentially eliminated from competitive consideration, and then some minor changes and nerfs, and then also the changes to Lina, for instance, some of the map changes like the shrines and stuff, it feels like they really got hit hard by that. And they kind of struggled to find an identity or style that stayed together. So I think in that sense, like, I feel like a bit of a decline had already begun before Kiev. Like Kiev, they came in 4th, and again, it's a single elimination tournament, so there's only maybe so much you can make of it based on their final finish. But I think the slide had already kind of begun, and they like when the new patch hit recently, 7.06 at Star Ladder, they really struggled and looked a little bit lost. And tournaments after that, subsequently that they played in, same thing. Like they just did not look like an elite team anymore. So I think kind of finding a strategy that they want to play, finding heroes that suit their playstyle with OP, because OP has kind of taken some criticism for having a very relatively limited hero pool. Before it was always the Tinker, and then it was the Lina. Like, can you find a playstyle and hero that fits him? And then they've been experimenting recently with roster changes too, because not roster changes, rather role switch, because XXS and Burning have taken turns switching at offlane and carry. So I think this is a team that's just been trying to get a grasp on things. They don't have like a firm identity of how they want to play. Sometimes it's heavy team fight. Sometimes it's more of kind of big ult, and then like give resources to the core. It's very different how they want to play. So I think that most people are buying low on the squad coming into TI7. I think they'll get things together. I think ROTK is coaching them. Because he won't be going to TI, so I'm not sure what will come of that. But yeah, if we want to talk about kind of projected finish or something like that.
Sure. What do you think?
I wouldn't be surprised if they finished in the bottom half of the teams. I think it would, if they finished top 4 or better, it'd be very surprising to a lot of people.
And again, a team that, when the invites came out, I don't think anyone was surprised that they were on the invite list by any means, because especially, of course, being top 4 at Kiev, pretty much guaranteed that was going to be the case. But you are right, and very good insight on IG there. Maybe
they had for the invites. So it was like they won DAC. That's pretty big tournament to win for your resume. And then top 4 at Kiev, like we saw last year with Fnatic doing well at the major, that was not really a guarantee an invite, and then they've just been slipping in lands afterwards. So I thought that their spot might be a little bit tenuous, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I think it depended on how the other Chinese teams did. I feel like if some of the other Chinese teams had won some of the lands, like let's say LFY wins Epicenter, or let's say LGD, wins Summit, then maybe, just maybe, IG has to sweat it out a little bit, but ultimately not the case. But yeah, I think some people have the feeling that they're kind of backpedaling a little bit into TI, and hopefully they can prove us wrong. And Burning will be there this year, which is huge for Chinese fans of the game in general. Like, he did not make it last year, and that was really a pretty sad occasion.
Is Burning one of the where would you rank Burning, off the top of your head, as far as like significant China Dota 2 players?
He's probably one or two. He's up there.
Yeah,
he's up there. So he's probably, it's not a stretch to say, he's probably the most popular player in China. So he is the emperor for a reason. So yeah, he's like, he alone is a reason for many Chinese fans to fan this team or wherever he goes, and just their loyalty to him. So
yeah,
he's the flag bearer.
I noticed 29 years old. He has to be one of the oldest players as far as relevant players right now.
Yeah, and that's something that is even more impressive. I think you have to put them in that class of like the other players who stuck it out for a long time, and ultimately Fear, for instance. That would be like I think a great finish to Burning's career. If he's the only mountain that he hasn't climbed really is TI, right? That's the only thing that's missing there. The feather in the cap. He could have stopped playing Dota, I think a long time ago if he wanted to, and then just enjoy still a life of luxury and stream or do whatever. Given his place, his status is secure. But for him to keep grinding and just keep wanting to play and just stay focused, and then that kind of resurgence, I think that's really impressive that he's been able to maintain that motivation. I think Seattle and TI is what drives him.
So what about the sister team now, IG Vitality? This is a team that honestly their resume wasn't the prettiest throughout the later part of this year. However, when it came to this qualifiers, obviously they really just shot up there. They finished first in the groups and ultimately got the first place seed as a result right there. Is this a team that you expect to do well?
This is a team that has been the kings of online Dota, but when it gets to LAN, they've really struggled. And I've talked to some people, like even close to the team, and you'll hear some things about like, they get really nervous, or it's just different on LAN. Like the communication is a little bit different, and you can kind of see it. Like when you saw them play against I think it was Virtus Pro at the Boston. It wasn't the full roster, but like you can kind of see like the potential is there. They have strong laners. They're a very like kind of heavy pub composition team, including maybe the headliner Paparazzi. Obviously like kind of one of the pub kings, pub stars of China came from those roots. But when it comes to performance on LAN, they've really struggled. I think the best finish they've had was like 4th place, I think, at DAC. And beyond that, like whether it's the DPL lands that they've played in or the majors, like they've really struggled. So that's the biggest question mark. Like at what point does that right itself, or can it right itself? Like this team has stayed together for a long time. They've been together since before the TI qualifiers. Last year, they decided to stick it out after not qualifying for TI. So obviously a lot of faith and confidence in the squad, and it's like, can they turn it around and finally perform on LAN? That's really the big question.
Well, now, what about the other sister team now? So you already talked a little bit about LGD here. It sounded like they're a little bit of a hit and miss, but if they're on, this is a team to look out for even winning it all.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is one of the teams with a better chance at doing that. I think the two LGD squads were considered by most observers pretty solid picks for qualifying out of China. Like it was them, and people disagreed on who the third team was going to be. But just talking about the LGD teams, Yao is you get these two guys who finally get a chance to have this like real leadership position in their teams. Yao and DDC, they're veterans, right? They've also been around the block for a long time. DDC was the only player to be at all. Well, I think he's one of 3 players to be at all TIs, and up until the Kiev Major, he and the Misery were the only guys to be at every single Valve event. And he's finally getting a chance to kind of captain and lead a team and some of his ideas and stuff. I think as I said, they're similar to LFY, are similar to Newbie in that they don't have a huge amount of pick versatility, but they have like their own ideas about the game, and they play and execute those very well and very consistently. But can they, will that translate to success later in later stages of tournament? So I think they're a team that's like, I would be surprised if they didn't top 8. I think they're a pretty good shot top 8, but I'm also like, I put them in the 4 to 8 range. For LGD, I think they're a bit more of a wild card team. I think you look at like their drafting style. You look at Yao also kind of in that leadership position now without Zhao 8 for once on that team, and it's like he's not afraid to make these kind of very daring or wild picks when the situation calls for it. As you saw like in the last the game 5 of MDL, like with how that draft went. Like he's not afraid to shake things up, but that can go either way. Like it can lead to something where the team feels a little bit unfamiliar and you can't practice for necessarily all of those strategies and play styles, and you kind of have to roll with it, and maybe it doesn't end up well. Or that can make them look very good, make them look kind of next level, and then it's hard to like counter a team that really is just afraid to pull anything out of their arsenal. Not afraid to pull anything out of their arsenal, rather. So I think LGD is the type of team that could finish, in the 12 to 16 range. Is also the type of team that could win it. So I think they're like the biggest wild card of this Chinese draw.
Going back to LFI real quickly, or LFY, excuse me. Afu, what's the deal with Afu? Because obviously he comes over from Warriors Gaming Unity, and from my, again, I don't have the longest experience, but it seems like foreign players in the China scene aren't necessarily. There's not a lot of them, right? It's usually just Chinese player that are on these Chinese teams. Afu from Singapore or Malaysia here coming and joining this team, and it seems like he's had very high impact, of course.
Yeah, he's been great. I talked to WGU a little bit about this actually, and they're like, yeah, he was just like such an important piece of the team. Like he was kind of the heart and soul of the team in many ways, and then going over like really hurt them. And but I mean, they're people that obviously they're happy for him that. He got a chance to go to China, is having success now in a big organization, on a big team. The level of trust and performance that he's had so far has just been exceptional. Like, they will fearlessly pick his hero first, like his 4 position first, like most drafts. Like they're not worried about that at all. They'll pick the 4, and then he will just, no matter what he's playing, you see his brand of Night Stalker throughout MDL. I mean, like the level of impact that he has on a hero, like the margins that he plays, like knowing he can come in and just be disruptive without getting killed or having productive deaths. A lot of Night Stalkers you see just kind of disappear after the early game. Like they just really seem to, if the game's not going well for the team, like they just seem to not be a presence anymore by mid game. That is not the case for Afu. And you see whether it's his Earth Spirit, like his game sense, his awareness, and his mechanics are just top notch right now. So that's been one of the engines behind their team success for sure. So that's been like a huge positive for them. And then they've kind of had a unique take on the meta and how they want to play it as well, and I think that's helped them quite a bit too. But then we saw at Epicenter and potentially at other events like that, where like when you get to later stages of the tournament, if you're up against a Liquid, if you're up against an EG, can you still handle that, or will you be able to handle the curveballs that you get or the counters that they have for you?
And now that leads us into the final China team. Of course, the other invited team along with Invictus Gaming. We got Newbie here. Newbie's story, I mean, this is a team that I constantly hear praise about all throughout. And yes, they have good results, but when it comes to both Kiev and Boston, obviously they did not finish that well at all. 9th through 16th in both of those. What are these expectations for Newbie at TI7, you think?
So when this patch first came out, again, I talked to some of the players in Shanghai, and they were like, hey, this is, we think this is our patch. They think it's a really good patch for them. I think some of the things that happened, so like with the shrines being nerfed, both the number of shrines and the frequency or the early start of the shrines, it reduced some of the lane variability. Newbie is a very structured team. Like they want to play according to, I don't want to say a script, but they want to play a very solid, dependable game. Like when they have a handle on rotations, when the game is being played at their pace, and the fights are happening when they expect or want them to happen, they're a very strong team. When there's a bit more chaos in the meta, whether it's extremely greedy meta, and extremely fluid or mobile meta, then they can start to have trouble a little bit, because they will always draft very solid. They'll always choose to draft like a dependable type of line. They'll never go for these kind of like super like let's say high skill cap like wombo combo type of lineups. Like those aren't dependable. That's not part of their playstyle and their view on the game. Faith has gotten some flack for his hero pool because it is a little bit has been considered a little bit limited, but that's part of the reason as well. It's like they want to play a structured style, and they can beat most teams at that. So they're the perfect example, I think, of kind of the stable team with a bit of a ceiling in some ways. Like, they will win smaller tournaments. They will consistently, majors being exceptions, but they will consistently finish like in the top half, or be there on like the final days of a bigger tournament. It's just a question of, do they have that final gear? They're a little bit slower, I think, to adapt to some of the heroes and some of the concepts that are happening either outside of China or in different regions. They've been the kings of China for the most part for this past year. They won both DPLs, and they've done very well domestically, where they have a chance to like really like you mentioned, goes back to the beginning, the installation, like really just figure out how other teams want to play, really just develop their style and find these counters. When they have less time to prepare, when someone throws a curveball at them, I think that's where they tend to struggle a little bit. So Newbie is another team, I think, like they're good. They're looking really good right now. Obviously they came in third at MDL, but I think in terms of consistency, it's going to be there. This is a team that I would say is the most likely to finish. If you played TI 10 times, I think Newbie would be in the top 6 the most out of any Chinese team. I'm not sure if they'd be able to win it though. I think they'd have to maybe either a good matchup or the things would have to go right for them. But that's true for any team. So yeah, I think there might be a bit of a ceiling for them.
All right. Well, it is an odd year anyways, so none of them are going to win it. That's what it always goes back to, right? That's just what we have to look at here.
That's an odd year. You guys can have the odd ones, right?
That's my analysis on all this. No, Jack, it's always a pleasure, man. I mean, that's some good stuff right there, and I know people tuning into this are going to appreciate all that insight you just brought to the table. So, before I let you go, anything else you want to say? Any shout outs you want to give?
Obviously shout out to the people at BTS, and it's been great like being back here. Away from China for this past month. Not away from China. I've really enjoyed being in China, but just to be kind of in around BTS, around the people. The hub was a lot of fun, as you can attest to. Like, just round the clock people, just enjoying games, ton of Dota, but also like room to like be silly and just hang out. It was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, just shout out to the people at BTS, and work with some great people on all sides, and then. Yeah, I think there's too many people I feel that I'd have to include to take this up. But thanks for having me, and I'm glad we got to go through this in a couple weeks till TI.
I can't wait to grab more dumplings with you when we meet up again in Los Angeles there. Good time. All right, take it easy, Jack.
All right, take care.
Okay, so now I'm actually going to be joined by the man known as Gareth here. He happened to be a caster, one of only 3 casters at the final match event that even recently took place in Peru here. Gareth, how's it going, man?
Good, recovering from an interesting illness I picked up at the Moonduck Hub, but apart from that, I'm doing pretty well, thanks.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording here. I mean, not that you weren't doing good. I mean, you were trucking through, and I know, especially with only 3 casters, definitely not the easiest. But you sounded like you were struggling there at the end, but you made it through.
Yeah, my voice was pretty much about to give in. One of the days, I don't know, like an allergic reaction to something. My face was all puffy and swollen up. As far as I know, I'm not allergic to anything, so just like the Papa John's pizza over in Peru screwed me over or something like that. I don't know what happened. No, probably, shaking hands with hundreds of these amazing fans, and I forgot to wash my hands, which is a rookie mistake. Kelly gave me a bit of a talking to, like, you're going to take hand sanitizer with you, you're going to make sure you wash your hands, because when you're casting, you rub your eyes or you scratch your face, and, just transfer germs at any LAN event, pretty much. Just gets to you.
So you mentioned, actually, you were at the Moonduck Hub before you actually went to this event. How was the Moonduck Hub?
Quite a bit of fun. It was a little bit disjointed with the first couple of days. Not everyone being at the hub, kind of splitting it across a studio that they used for their second stream. But once everyone was, at the hub and doing the main stream, it was a lot of fun.
I always got to say, checking out those hubs from Moonduck, it does seem like you guys just have a really good time, and obviously they're very good at making sure that happens. And I also got to say, really appreciated seeing the Casters Crucible. I'm sure it was a lot of tough work for those guys to really put on, especially for how long they did. But I thought that was a cool event of them to actually put on. I believe Sir Action Slacks may have been behind that, but I don't know if you had any involvement in that whatsoever. I checked it out, but what did you think of that?
No, I didn't have any involvement, but as soon as I heard about it, they released that hub page on their website, and I saw it, and I didn't understand it at first. I was like, "What? They're doing what? They're having random people come onto their stream? Is this going to work?"
Dangerous.
But the way they vetted and moderated it, made sure that they were going to kick people off if they were being idiots, which didn't really happen, fortunately enough. But giving a chance to up and coming casters that don't have the ability to jump onto some of these tier 2 tournament streams, or don't have the contacts, or don't have the ability to get games or lobby passwords for themselves is a really great chance for people.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it was a very effective event, and hopefully more stuff like that happens in the future. So, all right, back to the final match, though. Again, this was the LAN in Peru here this last weekend, even whatever. First, I got to say this, start with this. I mean, I don't know if this is the fault of the event by any means, but I think I'm in a lot with a lot of people here that I didn't even know this event was going on until like literally the night of. Do you feel like that was the case, or was that maybe on them, or?
It's hard to say with some of these events. It's happened before with events in regions that aren't as well known. They're very heavily advertised within the region themselves, but sometimes not as well advertised outside internationally. Or occasionally the Reddit thread that gets popped up doesn't get the traction, or maybe only one website reports on it. Like Ghost of Gamers and JD both did articles well before the event was happening, but we live in such a fickle environment, right? If the community in the West doesn't pick up and say, "Hey, this is a really cool event that we want to give upvotes to," then sometimes it just does fall away by the wayside a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's really on them particularly. Maybe a little bit of a bigger push for social media traction would have worked, but it's hard to say.
It is tough. Obviously, a lot of other things going on, including just right after the regional qualifiers. So, understandable. But so in the end, obviously the event itself, played out, and actually Alliance ended up taking it. But I want to, before we get even too much in the results right there, I actually wanted to get your thoughts on. You kind of touched on the fans, so many fans being there and wanted to shake your hand and everything. But what was it like being in Peru in general for a Dota 2 event?
It was pretty good, honestly. I've lived in Southeast Asia a lot of my life, and I can honestly draw a lot of parallels in terms of sort of culture, the friendliness, the sort of excitability of the people. We don't often get a chance, unfortunately, when we're at events, and you probably know this yourself as well, the hotel to venue kind of deal. You land in a country. I've got to start asking for a day or two, either before or after the event, to actually go and explore, because I want to try the food. I want to go and visit. I want to basically explore the country. I want to see what it's all about. Unfortunately, I was still pretty ill. I had a few hours on the last day I was there to maybe go out and try some guinea pig or go and try some of the local delicacies, but just in general, being in Peru was, it was a nice thing. The people are so lovely. Like I've never experienced that amount of excitement. Like Fog, Toby, and I, as soon as you step out, like I used to smoke, so I vape now. I step outside for a vape. Some of the players step outside for a smoke, and there's people, clamoring for you. There's just people going, Fogged, Toby, screaming their names. And you go over and you start signing the little booklets they've got and things like that. Mm-hmm. And there's people that want you to sign their booklets twice. They give you the little booklet and you're like, dude, I've signed it already. Like again, it's just absolutely ridiculously amazing.
Yeah, I bet. Make you feel like such a celebrity out there, which is definitely cool. And I do think it's hard for the masses to really appreciate the South America Dota scene, because we really don't get the most exposure to that scene if you're outside of South America. But of course, them introducing now the South America region into the majors, do you think it's also kind of reinforced the idea that South America is a part of these qualifiers now? With you being there, do you feel like more comfortable with that?
Yeah, it's a region with plenty of amazing players. They did unfortunately have a bit of a history with some of their better players, being banned through some of the match fixing scandal, which put a big dent basically into what could have been a flourishing scene a year and a half, 2 years ago. But with South America being added to the qualifiers and events like this, which, are major events for them, sure enough, they had some teething problems. They had some issues with production, but these are things that can be fixed through experience. They had the groundwork was done. A lot of the basics were definitely there. Mm-hmm. It's just little things, like scheduling that could have been worked a little bit better. But it's a really great step moving forward, not just for the grassroots, but bringing big teams for South American teams to play with. Because I honestly think that is one of the biggest things in esports in general, is the dissemination of ideas across countries, across continents. There's so much you can say about watching replays and, watching streams and learning from other teams by watching. But learning by doing is so important. Scrimming against other teams. When we see big majors and internationals, all we hear about is scrims, right? We hear about Southeast Asian teams scrimming with European teams. So having South American teams experience European, Southeast Asian teams come to their locality and actually play with them on a LAN event and have the ability to scrim against them as well, it just boosts the scene so much.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Alliance and Team Spirit were these two, especially big outside of South America region team names that were able to attend this event, and again, Alliance ultimately winning it in the end. I want to go on Infamous real quickly. That obviously this is a team that just qualified out of the South America region for TI7, so we're going to be seeing them there. They didn't do too well at this event. They went 1-2 in the groups. Now, again, this wasn't the greatest format, as you're touching on. I mean, a best of one initial is usually not the friendliest, but they went 1-2, but then they lost to Team Spirit in a one-game series in the very end. Team Spirit, a very good team, though, of course. What did you think of Infamous? Did you take anything from this, or was this for you like, okay, it was an unfriendly format, I'm not really looking too much into it?
I just think they just got screwed over by group and seeding. I think, they had some teams that knew them very well through Elite Wolves, and they were in the group with Alliance, who pretty much just cruised through and dropped one game, I believe, through the entire tournament. Did they drop a game? Yeah, they dropped one game to SG in the grand final.
Yeah.
So I think they got unlucky in groups, and then they faced Team Spirit in the lower bracket, and Team Spirit were really, really bloodthirsty that tournament. Like, they looked very good in that lower bracket. They ran through and were looking like they could potentially go and win the whole thing. So I think Infamous got a little bit unlucky. It would have been great for them, obviously, to win in front of a home crowd. I don't take a massive amount away from this in terms of, them going into TI and it dampening their efforts. It's still early days for that. It's just one of those things that happens, I think.
What about MVP Revolution? These guys here out of, I want to say, Kyrgyzstan? Like, where the hell do these guys come from? How about their performance? So
they've been playing a lot in Southeast Asian qualifiers. They used to be called No Lifer Reborn, and they've been around for quite some time. I think they've swapped one player out when they moved to MVP. But they're one of these sleeper teams, They're one of these teams that plays on 300 ping in Southeast Asia because they're in Central Asia, right? So they can't really play to Europe. They could play China, but you get into that whole messy, China versus foreign teams kind of deal like we used to see with the Koreans, where they don't like, scrimming, and they don't necessarily like playing foreign teams. So they play in Southeast Asia because it's the, closest kind of easiest region to get into. And they do reasonably well there. They take games off Maneski and TNC. They haven't made any major breakthroughs into, big qualifiers or qualified for any LAN events. But you can only feel it's a matter of time. They'll do that one move like MVP used to do from Korea, where they'll go to Singapore and they'll set up for, a boot camp maybe a week before qualifiers, before some kind of, LAN preliminary, and they'll make that run. I think it's only a matter of time. They're an amazing team. They've got a few little things to iron out. We did notice that they're pretty bad at fighting around the Roche pit, which they screwed up in a number of their games, which was really sad. One of the games was against Alliance, which looked like they were going to win and even out a best of 3 and go 1-1 against Alliance. But they made, one late game mistake, and Alliance took full advantage and kind of steamrolled them from there on. But they're very individually talented, and I think once they get those mistakes and sort of mid to late game decision making errors kind of sorted, they'll be a team to look out for.
Well, okay, so on Alliance end, do you actually think that do you expect that roster to stick together, and do you think they're better off with Era at that one?
They look pretty comfortable. They look pretty comfortable going this way. I think the flexibility that Era brings, being able to play such a multitude of heroes from Void to Huskar to Gyro, whatever Alliance wants to play, they'll play basically. Their drafts seem much more fluid now. In terms of heroes anyway, even though they still do have a very similar style with, 5 manning around towers, trying to take objectives from an early stage. I'm still unsure about them in general. I think they've also got a few issues in terms of kind of draft and play style, not necessarily in terms of personalities, because they all seem to get along very well with each other. All the Swedish lads together seem pretty happy, but it's definitely a team that can grow.
Yeah, Alliance really is a funny situation for me as well, in that I don't know what to expect because, I don't know if I do see them necessarily going out and getting a full new team by any means once again, because especially, do you figure they want to stick to their Swedish roots? And it's not like there's a plethora of players that are just constantly there that like, oh, well, we'll just swap a team and all of a sudden be that much better. So personally, I would like to see them keep what they have and try to build off of that, keep that consistency going, but it's as esports goes, who knows, right? As fickle it can be sometimes. So we'll see how they do moving forward. But, a win on their belt right here with this event is obviously got to feel pretty good. So TI7 coming up. What region did you cover for the regionals, by the way?
I did a bit of China, Southeast Asia, but I did the Chinese playoffs as my main bit of coverage.
Okay, so we actually covered pretty similar. I covered the majority of Southeast Asia, but a little bit of China there at the end. So what did you think then of how it played out ultimately, just kind of an overview for China specifically?
Group stages are pretty fun. It got a little stale pick-wise very quickly, with Sand King and Shadow Shaman being just picked first every single game. I would have liked to see some Night Stalker as well, but that hero was like perma-banned. But I think the real interesting thing was when we hit playoffs. Because throughout the group stage, you're learning the drafting styles of the teams. You're thinking, okay, this is their priority. This is what they like to do. These are the kind of styles they're playing. And then it comes to playoffs, and the teams that are there suddenly say, nah, we've got some pre-made strats and we're ready to roll with them. We're going to start playing properly now. And all of a sudden, Shadow Shaman's not picked anymore. Kunka's getting first banned. DK's getting first banned. Full understanding of what styles all of the Chinese teams were playing. And both LGDs looked incredibly good. The final series, the loser final, sorry, was it LGD against Keen?
Yeah.
I might be remembering incorrectly. There was one game in particular, and my mind has just gone completely blank. But there was an Arme Void in it, and LGD were losing this game like super hard. They were just like being absolutely hammered. They lose to like 2 lanes of racks, and they come back through I don't know, just sheer force of will. There was just something magical that happened, and they won a couple of team fights, and all of a sudden they win this game. And that kind of excitement is so, rarely found. And to have it come from the Chinese playoffs, to have it come from LGD, was just so spectacular for me.
Yeah. That was actually against Vici Gaming, I believe. That was the round before.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm actually looking at it right now. Yeah, no, that was a 66-minute victory. It come from behind. Yeah. Pretty epic game in itself. So LGD and LFY, you mentioned, of course, the 2 and 3 teams to qualify. Obviously, IG Vitality, one of the groups right there. But it is interesting, though, especially now that we have the MDL results just after that, how LGD and LFY, again, finishing 1 and 2 in that event. What do you think the chances are of the Chinese region as a whole? Because we have IG Vitality, LGD, LFY, Newbie, and IG. Both the Boston Major and Kiev Major, the China teams have been a overall disappointment I've talked about. Do you think TI7 will be different? Do you see one of these teams, if not multiple, going deep?
We had some fun around the Kiev Major, right, with 5 Chinese teams qualifying or being invited, and there was a lot of talk, from some pro players. I had a bit of fun with it as well, 5 Chinese flags out of 16 going to this event. Because we all wondered, is this really what we want? Is this really the strongest region in terms of numbers, in terms of how many teams you want in total to go to an event? And sure, they didn't perform amazingly, but looking at them now as they've progressed, and maybe a little bit of a swing of momentum, away from IG, the main squad, towards IGV, LFY, and LGD, who definitely look the stronger 3 over them. And maybe the kind of unknown factor of newbie, you're never quite sure what they're going to bring to the table, if they're going to step up to the mark or if they're going to flop and flounder like they've done in previous LAN events. They've got so much talent. They've got so much talent behind them. This might be the time we see like top 3 China all over again. Europe have to really step up. Like, honestly. But my worry was during the playoffs, sort of, maybe going back to touch on a little bit on your previous question, was the speed and style of Chinese games. Throughout the group stage and a little bit at the start of the playoffs, we were seeing like hour-long games consistently. Hour-long games, and everything was slow, meticulous, steady. And if games start to shift back towards that for the Chinese teams, I do worry how they'll face up against the tempo of Team Secret, of Team Liquid, of OG, who can play very, very quick, who can 6-7 minutes in start running at your towers, start killing you off. If the Chinese teams have the resolve to play up against that, if they have the understanding to kind of defeat that, then sure. But it's also very possible that these Chinese teams just cannot put up a fight. Honestly, it's so difficult to say.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people will look at these recent results of, again, MDL here and seeing LF1 and LGD finishing 1 and 2, even Newbie in the 3rd spot. So you kind of got this big event that's going into TI7, right, where the top 3 teams are China, and people may use that as a influence. But as I said before the event, and even said earlier on here, this is. I was not going to be looking too much into MDL results, mainly because, OG, I've even had fly out in the past, so, EG themselves, not that they're not trying at these events, but they're also not giving, their 100% strategies of making sure they can do everything to win, if that makes sense, when it comes to them actually truly trying to win this event, because ultimately their goal is to win TI7, right? Not to win the MDL. So we saw a lot of funky things going on in the group stages. I know you were busy watching or catching the final match, of course. I don't know how much you really got to catch of the MDL specifically, but my ultimate point is that I'm not looking at the MDL results and being like, oh, China's going to be dominant now in TI7 here.
Yeah, I saw a few little bits here and there, and I'm often very against the whole idea of sort of saying teams are holding strats, or they're not, or they're hiding something, or they're not playing 100%, because I often feel that's untrue. But in an event like MDL that is so very, very close to TI, it's one of those things that's going to happen, that players get burnt out, players have things on their mind, and it might not be, oh my God, what's the word? It might not be, set in stone. They might not be thinking consciously. Jeez. They might be thinking consciously that we're going to be, trying half as hard as we will for TI, but it will be there. It'll be that kind of thing in the back of their head, not talking to them, but they've got their eyes set on bigger things.
So TI7 itself, sounds like you do maybe like the China scene a little bit, but when it's all said and done, do you have a favorite team going into it even?
I mean, I love TNC. I've always loved TNC. So they're like the favorite team in my heart, right? They're the team that I would love to see win. I'd love to see them make another deep run, as they did last time, and get pretty far. As far as a team that I think has the greatest chance to win, it's pretty tough. It really is pretty tough, but I don't know, dude. I struggle. 3, 2, 1. You have to decide now. I have to decide right now. I'd say EG. I'd say EG.
Okay.
I think that OG have been a little bit lackluster, and sure, maybe they've not been giving 100%. They could step up for this event. I don't think Newbie have really hit their stride. The two LGD teams, I think, will probably struggle against some of the European teams or Southeast Asian teams that they know less about, just because of the playstyle differences. I think EG are like the most well-rounded team that we have right now that could, kind of fend off all of the attacks.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely a fair assessment right there. And again, I don't know if you even heard about it, but Crit running support puck several times in the MDL event. I wonder if stuff like that we're going to be seeing when it comes to TI7 from their strategy book there for Evil Geniuses. So,
or the Sumail Pugna.
Or the Sumail Pugna, or the Sumail Ancient Apparition. Like, they were doing some funky stuff, man, at that event. So we'll see what they bust out of TI7, but it's hard to argue against them as far as being the ultimate team and picking them and being one of the most well-rounded teams, of course. So, well, Gareth, I do appreciate you taking the time again, especially getting over your sickness here. You sound great, at least you're on the podcast, so that means something there. But thanks again. Any shout-outs, anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
Shout out to Join Dota. It's not dead just yet. And that's about it.
Still going.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, dude.
All right, appreciate it, Gareth. Okay, guys, so now I have a guest on that I've never had on before. Not sure if you guys would know him. No. Going to be joined by Zrock here once again. It's like I said, I don't even know if they're really a guest at this point. It's basically I think you're kind of just part of the show at this time. So Zrock, though, always a pleasure to have you on and talk some more Dota with you. So welcome back, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I like talking about Dota, and there's always plenty to talk about.
There is, and obviously we're in a interesting time again where there's not like a lot going on, but then there kind of is, right? There's this TI7 event around the corner. We just broke the prize pool mark from last year, so we even got that to be hyped about. The biggest esports event in the history of esports history, I guess. That was kind of weirdly said. The point is, there is a lot to talk about at the same time, so I'm happy that we get to be here to do this too.
Yeah, I'm glad there's tournaments going on right now, though. We just kind of wrapped up the last couple before TI, but in reality, normally this is a pretty dead month. Every team kind of goes into boot camp scrim mode, and we don't hear much about it, but we got to have a couple decent tournaments, and I'm very happy.
Well, there's even there is one to come, but I guess it's not like a full blown. It is only the 4-team event. We have the Dream League coming up, and when is that actually? That's
I want to say it starts this weekend, right?
No, not
21st.
This weekend.
Okay,
21st. So so we don't need to preview it in this show. Okay, so we could preview that in next show. But yeah, so that's pretty much the last event. But again, that's only 4 teams. In fact, only Secret and Liquid are the 2 teams that are even going to TI. So yeah, outside of that, MDL as well as Final Match were of course the kind of wrap up before. So, but yeah, now we're going to be in this phase of, again, teams, as you said, boot camping, really getting prepared. Speaking of the Final Match, though, I mentioned, I brought this up in, of course, the opening segment there as part of my bad of the good, the bad, and the ugly with Infamous. Infamous didn't do too well. This was a home event of sorts. Obviously, it was in Peru. They unfortunately crashed and burned. They only won 1 game in total in the group stages, and they lost in the 1-game series in the bracket to what was Team Spirit, I believe. Again, the format wasn't the friendliest, to be fair, but I kind of expected more out of a team that's going to TI7 representing South America, right?
Yeah, if you look at the actual games they played, the only real one that they only played 3 games in the entire tournament. So there really wasn't a lot, or I guess they played 4 right? Yeah. They played their group and then they lost their best of 1. So they didn't really get that many games in. And they beat Midas, a decent team out of Brazil. They lost to E-Wolves. That's the one that makes me a little bit nervous. They lost to another Peruvian team with former Infamous members on it, and that's the one raising question marks. I said in the last show we did that I didn't think Infamous would be able to perform on an international stage nearly as well as they were in the regional qualifier. So I expected them to bomb out to teams like Alliance and Spirit, and basically the tier 2 teams of the more developed regions. But yeah, them dropping that 1 game to Elite Wolves is really just what killed them.
I don't know. So I'm curious if you agree with me or not on my statement that I made earlier too, where with MDL I was talking about, and we mentioned this in the last show, that I wasn't looking too much into that tournament. No matter what happened, I wasn't going to overreact with the results because I did feel it was a lot of not necessarily a practice ground of sorts, but again, teams were really kind of trying things out with this new patch. There's still plenty of time before TI. This event, though, I do kind of feel like it does reflect Infamous in a little bit, in that this has got to be a little scary. This is almost kind of discouraging. If I was a fan of Infamous, if I was a fan of South America Dota, this would kind of worry me. Is that fair to say?
I absolutely agree. I'm hoping they use this as a wake-up call, that this gives them some exposure to what playing against these international teams is going to be like. That's not to say like Alliance and Spirit are necessarily top-tier international teams, but they're good teams. They've played for a while, and I'm hoping it's more of a wake-up call for Infamous rather than a discouraging thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough about that. Enough about the bad. I wanted to also have you on to talk about some fun stuff.
Can we talk about one more thing out of Final Match real quick?
Fine. What?
One real thing. MVP Revolution.
Yeah.
It's a team out of CIS. It's this tiny little country. And, I mean, I'm not saying they're doing great, but they got out of their group in the winner's bracket. They almost made it through the open qualifier in Southeast Asia. It's a weird area that they've got going on there.
I talked a little bit with Gareth, actually, before, being joined by yourself. So he had some interesting insight on that team, too, that it's just they've kind of been a team for a while, actually. They've just they're in that spot, as you said. They're from, where are they from? Kyrgyzstan, I want to say. Yeah, Kyrgyzstan. Yep. Over there. Like you mentioned, that CIS region. So it's like they just don't have a set place to necessarily really play their game. So the fact that they even got invited to this event in the first place, now they did replace what was MVP Hot Six, to be fair. Yep. So, it kind of helped, but I'm with you. It's fantastic to see this, frankly. It's fantastic to see teams from an unknown region of sorts do actually something at an international event like this. So I think it's just healthy for everyone.
Oh, it's insanely good. They beat good teams, too. I mean, they beat Thunder Awakens, who everyone's got to say is still a good team. It's the old Elite Wolves, and yeah, I was impressed. That's the one thing I want to point out of that. It's also the first time MVP's ventured out of Korea, I believe, for Dota.
Yeah, I don't really know on that for sure, but wouldn't surprise me because whenever I think MVP in that organization, I definitely think Korea.
Yeah, I mean, they had the Hot Six team where they flew NA players out there, but it was always been people living in Korea and Korea-based. And anyway, it's definitely interesting. That's just something that caught my eye from that tournament. It was really cool to see.
It kind of makes you how the hell do they find that team? Like, who finds a team in Kyrgyzstan?
Yeah, I mean, what team is it? One of the teams that made a pretty deep run in the closed qualifiers was an old team called Sanguine Sharks that somebody found out of a smaller country like that as well. Yeah. It's just those teams that stick together and make some sort of showing get noticed. And they're generally a lot cheaper for sponsors to pick up. So if somebody wants to buy a team and have their name on something, that can be a lot lower barrier to entry than getting somebody out of, say, Sweden or America, Yeah.
All right, well, again, enough about the final match here. We got some more fun stuff to talk about now. So what I thought would definitely be fun here, and basically going over the All-Stars as well as even the fantasy event that's taking place within the compendium, of course. For those that may not know, I assume if you're tuning into the show, you've purchased the compendium. If you haven't, you're missing out, frankly. Like, if you're tuning into the show, it's something that you want. Like, if you care about competitive Dota 2 at all, it's pretty freaking cool. And, one of the benefits, obviously, of having it, amongst many things, is that it does get you the access to both vote for All-Stars as well as compete in the fantasy event where you get actually player cards in the game, and then you can, put them in day by day. And it works like any really fantasy sport there, with some, minor tweaks here and there as far as bonuses, which, again, we'll talk about shortly here as well. But I wanted to focus on the All-Star first. And I wanted to kind of give our takes in terms of who we personally plan to vote. And maybe also if that varies from who we actually think deserves it. But I think that could be both. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting X factor here, right? Because they're putting money on this now. For the first time ever, it's going to have $100,000 prize pool on it. It used to just be something people did for fun. So yeah, I'm definitely curious to see if it goes to like the more deserving players or if it ends up being more of a meme thing. I definitely went with more of a joke lineup for mine.
I'm going to go with more of a serious because, as you said right there, $100,000 prize pool. I mean, that's ridiculous to me. The fact that they're doing $100,000 prize, is it winner take all?
Yes, I believe so.
Does it actually say right here? I don't see anything about it saying that,
but I have to imagine winning team gets 20 grand a player.
That's insane.
Yeah, which in almost any other esport, that would be considered a tournament win level performance. Like $100,000 was considered a major for CS even last year.
Yeah.
So
it's insane.
It's nuts.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia. It does suggest on the Wikipedia that the winning team takes $100,000. So that would be split up.
Absolutely nuts.
That is just crazy. Like the winner take all aspect is just crazy to me. And it's just best of one too, which is even that much crazier. So that's going to be something to kind of see how those players kind of come together. Because they're trying, that's for sure. Unless they make some behind the scenes agreement of like, yeah, we'll just split the money. But I don't know. Like I could see that happening, honestly. But I don't know. Because it's also going to be awkward, right? Where like players of the same team are on opposite teams. In fact, how are they even doing that? What are they going to do? Like, is it the first place in each position versus the second place in each position, or what?
No, you pick two different teams. Oh, you mean like how they're going to decide
how
goes?
They ultimately select? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it just says top two vote getters, so I'm assuming, it's going to be interesting to see if it's all going to be first place versus all second place, or if they're going to alternate back and forth.
Or what if they do like a draft, like a player draft?
That'd be interesting. Get Dendy over there and have Dendy pick who goes on what team out of the 10 people.
That could be something. Well, because obviously, you're really only selecting from 2, though, right? Because
exactly.
Just like per position. So yeah. I don't know. That they'll think of something. There's there's not the most detailed information just yet, but it'll be interesting to see what they decide on. Okay, so point is, as you said, we do as a viewer, a fan, whatever. You at home could do this too with your compendium if you haven't yet. You could actually select each of the teams, or basically 2 players for each position, is what it comes down to. So, do we want to start with the top here? Let's start with the carry position.
All right. I mean, I've got I want to go through my whole 5 here real quick, just because it all forms a theme. I've got Arteezy, Mid One, S4, Zai, and Puppy. Basically, the closest iteration we can get to one of the old secret rosters. Yeah, it'd just be interesting to throw them back together and see how it goes. If you really want to go even more meme heavy, put EE in the carry instead of Arteezy. Put him and Puppy back together. But
I kind of like this. Let's do this, actually. Let's do that. One of the teams will be a meme / just completely bullshit fun team.
Sure.
And then the other will be serious, 100% serious.
All right.
Let's do that. So my left side, I'll make my left side my fun team here. Okay. So you said what? So it was Arteezy as your carry?
I have Eternal Envy is actually one I have like locked. But either one, they were both on secret.
Wait, can Arteezy not be carry?
What?
Oh, no, you can just swap between them. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's either or.
I get what you're saying.
Yep.
Got you. Man, I got to go with my boy No-Tail. I have to. If we're doing the fun team, I have to do No-Tail.
Sure.
Definitely don't think he's the best carry in the world. I'll say that flat out. But for the sake of being in the fun vote here, I do No-Tail's my boy. And, everyone else, I don't have this relationship with necessarily.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Like
I did just get to talk with Jack about burning and how he's very significant in the China world there.
I would say it's almost 100% certainty No-Tail will be in this All-Star match. He's been in like every All-Star show match they've done since TI started, and they started doing them, I believe. And he's just a huge part of it. He's funny. He plays up the crowd. He's just honestly the best guy you're going to have if you're going to have a game like that.
Yeah. And that's where this is. This even takes me now to traditional sports a little bit, kind of off topic somewhat, but what is it? I believe baseball does this as well as the NBA to an extent, where pretty much all their all-stars come down to fan vote.
Yeah.
But then they do like a certain amount are selected by a committee or the coaches or whatever, but
Well, I
majority of them are fan vote, I believe.
Baseball, I think, is a weighted vote. Basically, the analysts and the coaches put in their ballots, and then the fans put in their ballots, and it's a percentage of the votes count. I want to say that's how baseball works.
It might be.
I'd have to double check, but yeah, it's something like that. There's a little bit of input from the actual orgs, and then there's a lot from the fans.
But that goes to the point I was making, though, that you're right with a player like Notel, who's done so much to really gain a fan base because of his character, rather than, I mean, obviously he's a fantastic player, but yeah, I think like Dendy is similar to this as well, where Dendy, has this large fan base because of his character, because he's the Pudge in a sense, and people vote for him because of who he is as a person, not necessarily because of his on the field, I almost said, but in the game.
I am about 40% sure Dendy will be playing in this All-Star game. I'm not kidding. I could see Valve flying him out, talking to someone else, giving him the 20 grand anyway, and then putting him in their place. I absolutely could see it.
That would be something. If he makes an appearance, yeah, that would be something. Wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so my fun team. So we got No-Tail. Who did you have as your mid?
I just took mid one. I don't think there's a mid laner on there that was on Secret at any given point, so that kind of does ruin it. Wait, was Fada on the original iteration of Secret? Maybe Fada.
I cannot tell you.
I gotta double check.
So for my fun team,
No,
I like
it's not.
Up-Ed. I can go Up-Ed here.
All right.
It's yeah.
Just throw Tomato in there. Just put a Peruvian on the team.
I might put Tomato, honestly, because like I'm looking at these mid players and thinking, like, again, focusing on the fun side. Who do I just like as a player / person? I don't really know Up-Ed. I don't really know Tomato, to be fair. Tomato. I don't really know any of these guys, so I don't know for really what much I can get from that.
Tomato's great. Tomato is wonderful.
Like a flashy, fun player to watch. Tomato is fun. Tomato. We're doing Tomato. Sure.
I mean, Miracle's probably the flashiest mid laner on there. Him or Sumail.
All I know is that I just nonstop heard about Miracle being like the best player in the world ever since I got into the Dota scene, or like when I first joined it at least. And my eye test doesn't suggest that. I mean, I don't know like if how many people are going to hate me because I just said that, but I'm not like, I get that he's a good player, but best player, best mid out there, I don't think so.
I mean, we all form our own opinions on stuff like that. Like, I agree Sumail is probably top 3 mids in the world. I think he's very good, but I think a lot of that is the system that EG is built around him. And I think the same thing about mid one on Secret. Like, to me, the best mid laner in the world right now is no one. I think VP has by far and wide the most independently good mid laner out there, but not an opinion a lot of people have. It's just, to me, that team isn't built around him. He manages to hold his own.
Mm-hmm. Offlane player. Who am I going with this? Let's see. Oh, KZ, of course. What am I thinking? 100% KZ. Jerax for my 4 position. Oh, that's just tough, actually. I gotta do Zai. Yeah, I have too much history with him.
Zai's just too adorable. You can't.
The picture they have from it too is just
it's
like,
so
pick
funny.
me, please. Please.
It literally
pick me.
looks like one of those Twitch emotes. Like they just cut out the shirt and it could be a Twitch emote.
I really would love to hear the story behind that.
Your 5 has to be Puppy though, right? Like,
no, it's Fly probably.
of course you're gonna go with Fly, you Han fanboy.
That's the point of this, right? This is my fun one.
That's fair,
I get to do that. Okay, so yeah, No-Tail. Oh, see, Tomato just feels out of place now. Hold on.
But that's the point. If it's a fun team, you have the one guy who speaks Spanish in the group there that's just kind of out of place. He's really young.
None of these mids play Han, man. I'm actually trying to find a Han player, and none of them played Han.
Really?
Damn.
I'm sure some of them did. They just weren't like good.
Yeah,
didn't Kaiser
maybe.
play Han?
Kaiser might have actually. Yeah,
I think Kaiser did.
Sure. You know what? I'll throw Kaiser in there.
The one vote he's gonna get the entire.
His family's gonna vote for him. Come on, he has friends. Helping out a boy. If he played Han, he's got my vote. There you go. I don't actually know for sure, but there is a chance, so I can go with it. Yeah, so we'll go with Kaiser. So I got No-Tail, Kaiser, KZ, Zion, and Fly. Zion, Fly, nice.
Zion Fly. My other half is literally just a variation of the MVP Hot 6 roster. I'm so sad that team is gone. It was one of my favorite teams in Dota. So I just took MPQO, Frev, Febby, Dubu. Let's reunite the boys.
Is it the whole roster's here?
Four of the 5 were on it all at one time. MP was on Hot 6 for a short period, but he was still on the roster at some point. But the other 4, that was all a core of old Hot 6. And I actually just like them a lot. Most of them speak English. They're really fun social people.
Oh yeah. Wait, mid one was part of that, right?
I don't believe mid one was. MP is the. MP, if you're talking mid laner, it's QO.
That's right. Okay. No, mid one was not part. I was gonna say it's because mid one's like a really entertaining player, but he was not part of that.
No.
But dude was definitely entertaining. I know that.
So from a conceptual standpoint, I'm hoping they make this All-Star game more fun. A big draw to it in years past is that it was something people could joke around with and goof off and enjoy it. I hope it's not taken too seriously because of the prize pool. That's probably my big worry.
Well, going to traditional sports, obviously making that connection there is with baseball, going back to that. Just this year is when they stopped doing it having impact and because basically for the last 15 years or whatever, the All-Star game for baseball, the winning division, the winning conference, or the AL, the NL, the league, I guess, got home field advantage in what was the World Series. Yep. So there was that influence from the All-Star game, and then I really pretty much the consensus was that it was awful.
To be fair, no one tries in the MLB All-Star game. It's like playoff break era. No one wants to get hurt at that time of the year. Like, no one is going to go 100% in that game because they don't want to get physically injured, which is not really an issue. No one tries in any
All-Star game.
Yeah. It's just, for them, though, it's a physical thing. If you get hurt, your career could be over, so why get hurt in a game that doesn't matter for your team?
That's fair.
So, I don't know. We'll see. I want jokes, but... Oh, God.
It's a $100,000 prize pool, though. That's what I was getting at. It's like... And I know in the big scheme of things, that's not like a crazy amount of money, as silly as that sounds, but it's a lot of money still. I find it hard to believe that Keizu in an All-Star game is going to be like, 20 grand, whatever. Not going to try.
On the flip side, though, the rumors going around, and I don't know if this is a posted thing or not, that the minimum prize victory for showing up at TI this year is going to be 100 grand.
So does that go? So how did that work? Didn't we talk about this where the 17th and 18th place teams last year? In the case of last year with the wildcard team, so what was that? Complexity.
They got nothing.
They got nothing, really.
Yep. That was rough.
You believe that the 17th and 18th this year should at least get 100,000?
I think they should, if we're talking from a personal level. I haven't seen any official post. But to me, they're providing entertainment. They're providing time that Valve's able to make money, get new players into the game. It's part of the event. It's no different than an appearance fee.
But I guess I meant more so that, will they? But
I believe they will at this point. I think once Valve flies them all out and they've seen what happened in years past with the wildcard teams not getting anything, I imagine there will be some payout for them.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back to this, though. So our All-Star selection. So we did the fun one. I want to do more of my serious one now.
All right.
So let's start with the carry. Who is the best carry? Who's the deserving carry?
It's No Tail. If you're talking like a deserving... Are you talking deserving as far as the best player or the best for the community to have in the All-Star game?
See,
those are very different.
I know. This is what's so tough about this always. So personally, I'm taking this as the most the best player, the best player at that position, the one that deserves it because of that.
All right, yeah, let's talk that. We'll go down that road. To me, it's probably between Matumba Man and Ramses. I think they've been consistently good and consistently a backbone for their team. I think most of these carries on this list have had huge up and down swings.
Yeah. Paparazzi stands out to me.
True.
I know that he has the title, though, of kind of being a pub star rather than an actual lane performer. Granted, he won the 1v1 event.
Yeah, yep.
At, DAC,
he won the mid 1v1 event as a carry player. That was great. But Yeah, I don't know. To me, I'm probably saying Lasse Matumba Man.
Tumbo Man, really?
I think he's been a huge reason Liquid got a TI invite. I think he kind of pulled them out of a pretty dark little spot they were in. That'd be my choice.
Yeah, I did not have him on my initial thought, but now that you mention that, like when I think Liquid, though, I honestly think, obviously, Miracle, as we were talking about earlier, but GH stands out to me as, like, he was a huge pickup for them.
True.
As a support player in that 4 position. I mean, that dude makes plays for them. So when I think of Mutombo, man, again, not to take away from his credit as a player, but I think more of the meme and troll side of him than the actual play side of him. So that's not fair. That's not fair for him, but
yeah. Well, and I mean, it's kind of funny though, because GH has performed very well for them. But if you think of who he replaced, like who moved on, he's replacing Jerax. Those are some big shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, you got to just make a pick, man. I got mine.
So who did you actually choose?
I've got Matumba Man.
God, I'm leaning towards Paparazzi. Ramses, though, is such a good player too. I'm actually I'm pulling up some Dota buff stats just to kind of help me get there. Yeah. Oh, man. I think I'm going to go with Paparazzi. I'm leaning towards him.
All right.
Some China flair there right away. All right, so Paparazzi is my carry here. All right, so mid. Now, this is a fun one.
My mid laner's no one. There's not even discussion for me. I've given my reasons.
I want, like, in my list is SCCC, or SC, whatever. I call him Sick. I think that's just easier. Mid 1.
In Sumail.
I think you have to deserve it to an extent. No, God, Sumail, like, kind of, yeah.
If you're just talking best mid laners, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's, like SCCC, no one, mid 1, and Sumail are probably the only 4 in argument there. Yeah. As far as just being the best skilled players.
See, I'm trying not to let this whole idea, like, of the outside influence kick in, because, again, mid 1's just always been so impressive to me. I think in a lot of ways he's carried Secret to their success for sure. And really? I was so impressed with him at Kiev. His play specifically. I remember in the group stages.
I think Yapsor wins mid 1 more lanes than mid 1 wins mid 1.
Well, okay, yeah, that's more recent Secret. And so, I'm reflecting back on Kiev Secret with Pilot Eye there, but
sure.
So I can't say I've been the most watching of them as of very late, but so that's what kind of stands out in my mind. I think I'm going to go with you, though. I think I am. I'm going to go with no one in the end. You made a convincing argument, and I think Virtus Pro deserves love here, and he's a very good reason.
He's the hallmark of that team. I mean, he is VP. Yeah.
All right, so no one is the mid.
Offlaner, to me, like, this may be history jading me, maybe whatever. Universe goes in that slot. I think throughout history, he is the best offlaner we've had in Dota, period. There are some other people that you could make an argument for, but he's just the best offlaner in the game.
Yeah.
If you think of how many metas he's dominated, how many heroes he brought to the scene, how often teams have to first ban him out, that's it to me.
Mm-hmm. That's another great argument there. Obviously, S4 I think has high potential of actually going.
Honestly, the problem with S4 is while he will win OG some games, I've seen him lose the team that many games single-handedly. Like that 0-7 Batrider game, last tournament? It's at MDL. Like, if I had to just give, like, a top 3, it'd probably be, like, Universe, KP, King Tekka, honestly. Like, that's my sleeper pick for, like, best offlaner. I think he's just disgustingly good.
What about in July? About G Vitality?
I don't think he's bad. I just don't... I'm not voiced enough in Chinese Dota to stack him against the rest of the international competition.
Yeah.
Like, in China, I think he's probably the best offlaner. But as far as how he compares on a global stage, I couldn't really.
I know Faith Beyond of Wings last year was definitely considered that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's not. He is not here though.
Ouch! Painful memories.
Reasons. We've already talked about that with Jack earlier.
Yeah, no reigning champion back this year. First time ever.
It's an odd feeling.
It is really going to be weird.
Man. I don't want to go the same as you. I can't do that. I almost did kind
I'm
of
just
want to
so convincing though
because of that, but I mean, honestly, that was definitely going to be one of my top, if not my pick too. But because you picked him, I'm going with In July. Is kind of weird because if I pick In July, then I have 2 IG Vitality players already. And honestly, I'm not expecting IG Vitality to do that well at this event, so that feels kind of off doing that. XXS, I feel like, XXS is interesting, though, because he's also been playing the 1 position lately, too, for them. So he's kind of been transitioning back and forth.
Yeah, that whole roster is interesting, seeing what IG's done over their time.
Wait, why is King Tekka the Queen Tekka?
Because he changed his name right before the lock.
Oh my god.
If you notice, Benjaz is Super Benjaz too. Infamous just decided to make some jokes.
Alright, I'm going to go with Raging Potato because of his name. I love that name. I love that name so much. No, I'm gonna go with In July. You know, it was my first thought. Okay. I don't care if it puts 2 players from IG Vitality on it. I'm doing it. All right.
For the 4 position, we can go different ways here because I'm split. It's either Yapster or Jerax for me.
I'm 100% Jerax.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning.
That's like my one. I'm just no question asked. I don't even have to think about it.
It was that way for me 100%. And then, man, Yapster has been on a tear. He's just been nuts. But I'm with you there. I am fine with Jerax. That was an easy talk.
Well, no, to kind of keep it going a little bit, though, I do look at the 4 positions. You could argue, like, across the board, the 4 positions has, like, the best talent. I mean, yes, Jerax is the quote-unquote easy decision for me, but we got Lil from Bristro, GH from Liquid.
Kaka and Aoi. Yeah.
Baboka.
Mm-hmm. Even Afu has had some huge game-winning performances for LGDFY.
Oh, yeah.
Febby, my boy Febby out of Fnatic. Yeah, there's a lot of great people here, but there's just a hierarchy, right? There's a stigma that goes with certain players, and just can't beat Jerax. It's just Jerax.
And then we got our 5 support. All right, so 5 support.
I don't know.
This is like, the least underwhelming now.
A part of me wants to say Fly. A part of me wants to say Crit.
No.
I mean...
there are more captains, right, than honestly, actual players.
I'm going with Theban. I think the stuff he has done on TNC and the way he has brought himself into that team, and it's still been a steady performer ever since Demon went away from them. That's just super impressive to me. And... I haven't given him a nod yet, and I think he probably deserves a slot.
I respect that for sure. Theban's a great guy, and I agree. His influence on that team is definitely really showing, and he's going to be a reason why TNC actually has a deep run at this TI7 if they do. So, I think he definitely is deserving. I would not be surprised to see him in the All-Star game. Do I actually want to vote for him though? Probably not. To clarify also what I meant earlier, as you made your point though about Theban, on Crit and Fly, again, they're not like just captains in the sense that they're bad players, but when I hear those names, I think more of their captaining and their drafting role rather than them as a mechanically skilled player. Now, to be fair, that just depends on how you want to vote this. Like, I could vote that way, or you could vote that way if you really wanted to, but
I mean, I don't think we have that many high mechanically skilled 5 supports. I just most of the people that are more mechanically skilled aren't playing 5.
That's fair.
Literally the reason that we have 5 position players, and yeah, So to me, that's the merit in picking this, is who's the best captain, who's leading their team, who's driving everything forward.
It's so funny because doing this right now is almost making me realize how much of an IG Vitality fanboy I am.
You really are.
I kind of am, because I have my cursor highlighted on dogfights right now for IG Vitality. And I just remember being so in awe of this player. This goes back to when I really was first breaking into the scene again, the actually previous MDL event back in September of 2016 there, and he was just so fun to watch in that tournament from his and actually at that time he was playing the 4 position too. He was playing the Breaky, the Earth Spirit, the Bounty Hunter, that kind of played. So I can't vote him here though. I can't do that. No love for Kuroki?
No.
Just
no.
We'll just leave it at that.
I can respect what he's done for the scene and various teams he's been on, but that man is a team killer if I've ever seen one. Like, a lot of people have just said he's difficult to get along with. I don't know. I can't pick Kuroki.
Crit did show some awesome puck support recently.
He did.
Yeah.
And honestly, I got to tip my hat to Crit, because in his interviews last year at TI, he said, I didn't want to be the captain. No one else wanted to, and I guess I'm doing it now. And like, he started in this not wanting to be that leadership role, and he has really come into his own.
Wait, they have Dubu as a 5 support?
Yeah, I don't know why.
That is kind of weird, actually. Hold on. Huh. Bulba's the 4 support here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, because I thought Dubu played more of the 4 roles. Anyways, yeah. I almost want to go to Fly, actually, which is kind of, he's on my fun team. But because of the mix of the captaining But no, he's on my fun team. I saw Kimo there. If I had to pick somebody else, then... No, I'll lean towards Crit. I will.
All right.
Mix the captaining. He's going to be the captain of the team. The drafter.
Got it done.
Good enough player. He plays for EG after all. So there you go.
True statement.
This is a interesting lineup I ended up with. So Paparazzi, No One, In July, Jerax, and Crit.
That's like a team from every region. 2 Chinese, right? And then...
Yep. Yeah. CIS, Jerax, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. Same with Crit. No Americans. I got to change that.
What? Crit's playing on EG. He's honorary American.
I mean, yeah.
He counts.
That. How many Americans are actually at this event? There's not many, are there?
No.
You got Bulba.
7.
Aui's Canadian, right?
There's one more Canadian than American, I believe.
Ouch.
I don't know. There's an infographic on Reddit if anyone wants to go look.
I did see that, yeah. All right, there we go. Well, that was almost even harder than I thought it was going to be. But if we're talking about...
you made that a lot harder than it needed to be.
I did. And obviously, as it probably showed, I didn't necessarily come into this, with a very set gameplay. I kind of wanted it to be more reactionary. And
sure.
It proved to be difficult. It did. But I am happy with my lineup in the end, both my fun team as well as my...
And not only am I happy with my lineup, I'm happy I got to sway you a little bit. Always nice doing that.
Yeah, no one definitely won. You won me over with him, so.
So, how's your player card collection looking?
So, fantasy player card. My player card collection. I am still missing 3 players in total, actually, which is kind of frustrating. I'm missing Swift Ending from Planet Dog. I'm missing Sam H from TNC, and then I'm missing Anna from OG, which is really annoying because I wanted to select OG as my favorite team.
I have all gold OG.
Classic.
Mm-hmm. It was my first English-speaking team that was all gold. I was pretty content with that.
Are they your favorite team?
That's what I have marked as. I'd probably be an EG fanboy if I had them in all gold. I actually had enough packs that I dusted everything that wasn't gold to try to finish out a full gold set. But
Jesus.
I am 6, 10, 13, 16. I'm 17 cards short. So I have 77 gold cards.
Yeah, your compendium's what, level 1200? Yeah, 1253. Jesus. Got up there. I'm at a measly like 180.
I had some people help me out there. There were some donations coming in.
That's nice.
It was.
Well, you got all the gold player cards, and so yeah.
All right, yeah. Let's talk about that from a conceptual level, because I do have a bit of an issue with that. I like the idea of the gold, silver, and standard cards in giving you extra effects on your TP. I think that's fine, cosmetic purposes. I really don't like them giving bonus stats on gold cards, though, and silver. Like, it almost undermines the integrity of it way more than I would like.
For what they're doing, I kind of get why, and I am a little bit of the opposite, because being the way that this isn't a traditional, where we're drafting players amongst, 8-10 other people or whatever. And so we each draft a player, and then like if it was running that, like I would actually prefer that in the end ultimately. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on here, but I would prefer that ultimately. But because obviously that just wouldn't be, reasonable for them to do. Instead, they have this global thing where everyone's competing against each other. So they had to differentiate somehow, right? Or else it's just everyone's going to have similar scores, and there's going to be no difference really. So I think for what they're given, what they have to work with, I actually think it works out just fine. And yes, it does kind of suck. It makes it very RNG heavy, makes it this trading card game RNG style, which kind of sucks. But
if it was a trading card game, I'd be totally fine with it. But it's a collectible card game. You can't trade them, and that's a huge issue to me. If you could trade them, that'd be fine then, because you can, have a little community going that's looking for specific stats and gold cards on specific players, and we'd have a whole little economy and system built up. But with the way this is, it's essentially just buy more compendium levels, get more packs, hope you high roll your stats.
Yeah. I mean, that's and that, yeah. What is the, so you think that the trading aspect would actually be the solution there?
I think trading would make it totally okay to me. I would have zero issue with it.
But then you're getting to a point where, I don't know if this is a legal issue, but trading / you have people buying player cards on the market. Like, is that?
It's no different than a cosmetic.
I guess. No, you're right. It's
From a practical sense, there's nothing there. You're not actually gambling anything. So
yeah.
No issues there. But yeah, I also have to say, I'm a little disappointed. Last year, you were able to buy packs at something like 50 cents or $1 a piece. And I'm really sad they tied it strictly to Battle Pass levels at this point. It makes completing sets a lot harder. If you're one gold card away, you may be buying 200 compendium levels to hit the one gold you're missing. Or, even if you're not spending that much money to even just complete a set. And tying it all into Battle Pass and not having an alternative purchase method definitely rubs me the wrong way a little bit.
Until you mentioned that, I didn't even know that was a thing, because I do remember from the Kiev Major and even the Boston Major that, yeah, you could buy individual packs.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. They don't even give you that option now.
Yeah.
Huh. That is an odd choice by them. I know. I agree with you there. I'm not a fan of that at all. Because like here I am sitting with 3 players, like I said, I would just like to just buy more packs to be able to get, but I would have to buy levels instead.
Yeah, you'd pay $5 to get 5 more packs and potentially finish it out, or 50 cents a pack or whatever they would be. That's a lot more reasonable than 10 Battle Pass levels or 20 levels between, well, it looks like it's almost 30 to even get another set of packs. And yeah, it just gets out of hand in a hurry. I don't like the tie-in system in this.
Well, so again, I think it's a little too early to be talking about, who we have set up where, because we have to wait until we know what the schedule looks like, right? And that's kind of one of the unfortunate things about this too, but it is what it is. You can't really get around that.
Yeah.
But no, August 2nd is the group stage when it starts there.
The fact that you don't set a roster for the entire group stage is a little odd to me, that you have to do it daily. So you're basically looking for what team's going to play the most games, if who's going to have the potential to go to tiebreakers or whatever the system may be. And yeah, the fact that it ends up being a daily maintenance thing is a little odd to me. I wish it was more just pick your 5, lock them, and that's what you get for points.
Yeah. No, I think that would be a fun way to approach it too. But the diversity at the same time, keeping you checking daily could at least it allows you to kind of swap things up, from day to day and take advantage of those gold cards that you have and the varying points. Like right now I have an Abed, but a golden Abed here. Unfortunately, one of his traits are Obs Wards planted 10%. So it's almost like a wasted stat there, of course.
Yeah.
The fact that that's there. So it's like stuff like that too is a little frustrating where that can happen. Like carry shouldn't be allowed to get that stat, I feel like, but they do, and that's just part of even more of the RNG that's coming to the table here when it comes to selecting. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm as far as like a roster that I don't know, is there like a team or like a roster that you'd be leaning to put together, or are you just going to kind of react to what the schedule looks like and then who's playing when?
Mostly schedule, yeah. Absolutely. Part of it's going to be on the bonuses I have. I have a couple gold cards that are actually over 100% total in bonuses. So,
Jesus.
Yeah, I have a few quality cards. So if they get good matchups for the day, they'll definitely be very beneficial.
Yeah.
But this is all going to be mostly a side thing, just something to do amongst friends. And I don't even know how many of my friends will be into it, especially with the kind of the odd pay to win system it is this year.
So that kind of leads us, though, into this. Something else that we did want to talk about where we noticed that we're kind of sitting here complaining about all these quote unquote problems that we feel like, we have with this. Well, we kind of decided why not just do our own, right? Why not just fix those problems and do it ourselves? Because ultimately all we really need to do is just come up with a scoring system, which, we've kind of to an extent, we started one a little bit. I mean, maybe you still need to look into that a little bit more, but I think, once we get that done, especially, we could have our own draft, get 8 people total or even 4 people and kind of draft our own players and, have a team basically to go for the group stages and compete against one another. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. It absolutely will add a little more engagement. We're basically just fixing some of the issues that come about in this point system and the way that it's set up here. So I'm super excited. I'm really looking forward to it, honestly.
So yeah, guys, we'll have more information on next week's show. Again, it's something that we kind of just we're talking about here very recently and putting together. And obviously, then ideally we need to also find out, a couple other people out there that want to, join us, and maybe we could try to get you guys involved somehow. Again, unfortunately we can't open it up to everyone. That kind of that makes it a little difficult once again as far as what we're trying to pull off here. But
it'd be really fun to get us getting like people like Nahaz and some of the other statsy based analyst type people in on it, and then have the viewers end up forming their own little 8-man league and then like see how it stacked up point to point with our league. It'd be a lot of fun if we could end up getting something like that together.
Hey, we got ideas. If you're interested in even helping us out, feel free to message me or Zrock on Discord there, or send us a tweet, and we can see what we can make of it. Again, we're just looking to a fun way to basically make the fantasy side of this take place. It's good that they're doing this in the compendium. It's cool to see for sure, but yeah, as I know you do as well, and I know I have history, playing traditional fantasy sports. It'd be kind of fun to tie that in really with the Dota 2 event here, and we got that coming up. So yeah, we'll have more information next week, guys, on that as far as what we're going to be doing with that, though. But just to kind of give you guys a heads up on what the plans are there. So yeah, I think that though wraps up or pretty much is getting there as far as what we wanted to talk about here. The fantasy side of stuff, as well as our all-star teams.
I believe so.
Sounds sad, Zrock.
Yeah, just always sad when this is over. It's a good time. I just look forward to it every week,
Right now, Team NP is my favorite team, and it just feels wrong.
That really does feel wrong.
Because who else would I see? You know what? I'm going to put IG Vitality. What am I thinking?
There you go. Might as well.
I learned something today. I'm an IG Vitality fanboy.
I'm just styling on people with the gold OG TP thing. It's great.
It is really cool what they do, though. Again, as much crap as we're getting them about the fantasy side, they do a lot with this compendium, as well as the battle pass in general. So, I mean, I like it personally. Again, I'm a little bit newer to all of this as far as actually being a player with it now and stuff, but I am definitely in awe of sorts as far as how much they really do. So, It is pretty cool of Valve.
Yeah, I wish the rewards would have some sort of carryover, I guess. Like, it's sad to see all this hype building and all these cool things get added, and then they just get, in essence, stripped away when the battle pass ends. I understand why they do it, but then there's this awkward like month gap till the next compendium, and we don't even know if there's going to be any more compendiums other than the TI one now with the new structure. So
that's true.
I'm a little sad to see the way that that's all going, but it is what it is. In the meantime, I'll enjoy my TP effects.
There you go. You get to enjoy those. Hopefully predictions can come out in the near future here too. Again, I don't know what we should expect with that. Again, even let alone with the schedule announcement. So I don't think it's going to be by next week's show by any means, but perhaps the one following that, we may be finally able to start getting a better look to.
I mean, that's the whole point of the show, right? You and I actually keep up on this, and then we educate the masses, spread the good word of Pro Dota.
That is the idea. So hopefully we're doing a good job of that, and hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. Let us know if you aren't, and what we could do to do better, of course. But also let us know if you are enjoying it.
Just flame me. Make a Reddit post. It's fine. It's all the rage right now. That's
the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
That was Zrock. Always a pleasure, man. And thanks for joining me here talking fantasy and All-Stars and TI7 in general. Plenty more to come still.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, and we'll see you next week, I'm assuming.
Maybe. Okay, probably. Yes. All right, so as we're winding down here, getting near the end, there's another piece of news that I actually wanted to bring up before wrapping things up, and that was Virtus Pro. Actually, speaking of Virtus Pro, a little bit there with the All Star selection and stuff. I mentioned no one is my All Star selection for the mid, just as Zrock's for good reason. The team as a whole is a great team, and I mean personally, this was a team that, at the Boston Major, again, when I was really first breaking in, being the first big event for me personally, I heard a lot of hype about this team. And, they didn't necessarily do bad at the Boston Major, but they came up a little short than expected. They were probably the favorites, if not expected to get to the finals team. And, that didn't happen. So it was a little underwhelming. And then even after that event, they seemed like things were a little bit rocky. They weren't really playing in much. So I didn't really know what to think of this team. I felt like maybe they were overhyped a bit, but we got to see them play more throughout the year. And obviously with the Kiev Major getting to the grand finals and taking OG to the 5-game series, that's what started to really sell me personally. And then success that they went on to have past that, especially even at a tournament like the Summit event, that they ended up winning in dominating fashion, really, and the way that they did, where they were playing so many different heroes. This is a team that definitely has grown on me, and I'm sure it's definitely earned the respect of a lot of people out there. An announcement that happened today, actually earlier today, even, was that the Virtus Pro organization decided to sign the team for the next year. So, as according to the contracts, at least, the team will stay in full of the 5 players that they currently have throughout the 2018 year. So obviously, we got this whole new structure coming out that with the post TI7 here, and clearly they're excited about that. And it's cool to see stuff like this. This team's basically getting ready, or not getting ready, but more so preparing for the future down the line. Trying to prevent this, what has happened so much in esports, let alone the Dota 2 scene, where especially after something like TI takes place and the team falls apart, and they start from scratch in a lot of ways, or the whole shuffle takes place. And hopefully we are getting to more of a spot where teams are going to be more consistently together, because that no doubt is a strong asset for a team. In fact, having Theben on last week, 1437 of now TNC, that was one of the things that he had brought up, in his case being of Team NP, and how he was removed from the team, and how it really kind of threw him off, because they thought that he thought they had a good thing going, yet they wanted to go a different direction. And his mentality is that you need to really stick together as a team. You need to build that chemistry over time. It's not something you can expect to just click right away. So obviously it helps when VP happens to be doing overall very good, but they have had their downswings. Again, going back to the Boston Major, in an event they were supposed to do so well at, and they had a little bit of a hiccup there, but they've obviously persevered through it. And this is a team now, we know, at least again, according to the contracts, they're going to be staying together until the end of 2018, as I'm reading here. So it's going to be much longer at this point that they plan to stay together. So great news to hear, and congratulations to the players on VP, and obviously the Virtus Pro organization as a whole right there, for no doubt getting a very, very solid team. Ramses, No One, Pasha, Lil, and Solo. To clarify, of course, who is on that roster. All right, guys, that is going to be wrapping things up, though, for the DotPro with BreakyCPK. I am BreakyCPK, of course. Hopefully, you guys enjoy the show once again. Big shout out to my guests, from Jack to Gareth, and once again, Zrock here, who, like I said, is really kind of becoming more of a staple on the show, to be fair, in Zrock's case. But definitely shout out to them all for joining me. And as I was also saying earlier, feel free to leave feedback, guys. Always willing to feedback, always willing to, be hit up, whether it's on Twitter or even the Discord channel for the Defense of the Patience there, of course. Definitely willing to have a chat and talk in competitive Dota 2 especially. So, and again, if you do have any ideas or any way that you think you can help with our fantasy setup there, to have fun with, and something that will definitely interact with you guys on these weekly shows, at least, and perhaps even at TI itself. Feel free to let us know. Feel free to let us know what you guys think on that. So until next time, have a good week, guys. We'll see you on the next DotPro Weekly.